The country sends a wife. Took 5 stunning beauties home to have children. Humiliated during a blind date, Lin Xiaofan finds himself transported to an ancient war-torn era with a severely imbalanced male-to-female ratio. The country assigns him a wife, and those with big hips and round waists are highly sought after, while the petite beauties who can't bear children become unsellable goods. Lin Xiaofan unapologetically takes 5 stunning beauties home to have children. Ridiculed for being poor and unable to support his wives, Lin Xiaofan manufactures his own medicine and starts making a fortune. While everyone waits for Lin Xiaofan to fail at having a son, his 5 wives each give birth to 10 children at once, shocking the entire court and beyond. Even the woman who once looked down on him during his previous life now grabs his hand every night, begging him to have children. Women, step aside. In this chaotic world, I, the future overlord, am destined to rule the world. Chapter 1, The country distributes wives. Lin Xiaofan, wake up. Lin Xiaofan was startled awake by the sound of shouting. He opened his eyes and saw many men's faces, some older, some younger, all with different expressions. He could also hear the sounds of screams. Please stop. Spare me just this once, I promise I'll have more sons next year. County Magistrate, I swear I'll have more sons, just don't hit me, if you injure me, I won't be able to have any children. The sound of the wooden paddle hitting continued. Lin Xiaofan shook his head, and the overwhelming flood of unfamiliar information finally made him realize what had happened. Had he traveled through time? Had he somehow ended up in the body of another man with the same name? This place was the Great Qian Kingdom, an alternate historical dynasty that didn't even exist in any history books. In this world, there were many small countries, constantly at war, with the people suffering. Most of the men had been conscripted to fight and had either died or been severely wounded. Now, the Great Qian Kingdom had a frighteningly skewed male-to-female ratio, with women outnumbering men by a ratio of 9 to 1. The few remaining men were mostly elderly, weak, or disabled. Seeing this, the king decided that something had to be done. Otherwise, they would become extinct without needing to be invaded by another country. The king ordered his ministers to find a solution, which led to the policy of wife distribution. If a man over 16 didn't marry, he would be conscripted into the army. If a woman over 19 didn't marry, she would be sent to a brothel. To encourage the people to have more boys, the kingdom also implemented a strict reward and punishment system. When a man married, he received a reward of 500 wen. If he had a child within a year, he would get an additional silver tael. If he had a child within 2 years, he would get 800 wen. After 2 years, the reward would drop to 500 wen, and if no child was born within 4 years, he would be punished with 10 strikes and fined 1 tael of silver. At 16, every man was required to choose at least 2 wives, with no upper limit. If a man chose 5 wives in one go, he would receive an additional 500 wen. The screams Lin Xiaofan had just heard were from men who had taken wives but hadn't been able to produce a son after 4 years. Xiaofan, you got scared and fainted already? A man in his 40s helped Lin Xiaofan up, shaking his head in disappointment. You're too timid. Don't worry, kid, even if you can't have a son, I'll help you out. The first time you marry, it's always like this. Just marry a few more times in the future. Lin Xiaofan realized that the body he had taken over was just 16 years old, and this was the first time the original owner was picking a wife. By the way, did you bring silver? The man speaking was Li Ermarzi. He had survived smallpox as a child but was left with pockmarks all over his face. Silver? Lin Xiaofan was still a bit dazed. He recalled that the original owner's family was poor, unable to even afford 3 full meals a day. How could they have any silver? Hey, kid, if you don't bring silver, you're going to have trouble later, Li Ermarzi whispered, pointing at a group of women standing nearby, giving him a sly smile. See those women? The ones on the far left. The ones with big hips and round waists, these women are definitely easy to bear children. Not only can they work hard in the fields, but they might even have twins in 3 years. The ones in the middle aren't as good as the ones on the left, but they have decent hips and are also good for childbirth. As for the ones on the far right, Li Ermarzi shook his head and sighed. You see their small frames. A gust of wind could blow them over. Their waists are thinner than my arm, and their hips are pitifully small. Taking one of them home. They definitely won't be able to have children. Xiaofan, I'm telling you, if you don't have silver for the guards, you'll probably end up with these rejects. Lin Xiaofan, while hearing Li Ermarzi's description, looked over at the women, inwardly amazed. It was surprising to see that the aesthetic preferences of this era were so different from modern ones. The women on the far right, each of them with slim waists, A4 waists, and mask waists, would have been popular in modern times. If they showed their small waists and long legs, they'd be swarmed by lonely bachelors online, desperate to make a move. Yet here, in this world, they were considered undesirable and unsellable. As for childbirth, Lin Xiaofan, a graduate with a Master's degree, didn't he believe that a smaller waist and smaller hips would make a woman infertile? After all, the gender of the baby was determined by the man, wasn't he it? While observing these unsellable goods, Lin Xiaofan's pupils suddenly contracted. Among them, he saw a familiar face. He remembered the last moment before he had crossed over. He had been sitting in a high-end cafe, on a blind date with this woman. She had extended her delicate fingers, adorned with beautifully manicured nails, and arrogantly asked him, "Are you Lin Xiaofan? You have a Master's degree. That's acceptable. Do you have a house? Do you have a car? Do you have $1 million in savings?" Now, a Master's degree was nothing special. Lin Xiaofan only earned a little over 10,000 a month, and his family was average. With that income, it would take him decades to buy a house outright. When he had shaken his head, the woman had stood up disdainfully, leaning slightly forward. Her tight red top couldn't conceal her bust, nearly pressing against Lin Xiaofan's face. She had whispered, "Handsome is no substitute for wealth, you know." Her light perfume had made Lin Xiaofan blush slightly. Then, she had smirked, tilted her coffee cup, and spilled the entire drink onto his head. "Do you think someone with no house, no car, and no savings should be here for a blind date? Look at yourself in the mirror." With that, she grabbed her Chanel bag, swiveled her hips, and left, her high heels clicking loudly on the floor. Who would have thought that just as she was about to leave, she ran into robbers? Lin Xiaofan stroked his chin, his eyes greedily landing on her. Could it be that he wasn't the only one who had crossed over? Feeling his gaze, the woman turned toward him, her expression changed, and she seemed about to approach him. But a woman next to her grabbed her and covered her mouth, warning, "Li Xiaoqian, are you crazy? You want to be sent to a brothel?" Li Xiaoqian, still looking in Lin Xiaofan's direction, felt wronged, but Lin Xiaofan had already averted his eyes. With the punishment over, the wife selection began. 5 men were called up at a time. Lin Xiaofan curiously watched as the men whose names were called ran to the left. There, the women with large bodies and big hips were quickly taken. Those left behind banged their chests in frustration. Li Ermarzi was especially agitated, his eyes practically shooting flames. These people are so selfish. Just because they have some money, they take all the good ones. Leave 2 for me. Chapter 2, please. Take us in. Less than 2 minutes? Lin Xiaofan couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Li Ermarzi sure had a peculiar way of describing things. Curiously, Lin Xiaofan glanced over at Xu Laosan, who seemed to be in poor health, his eyes sunken, his skin pale yellow, and his body was frail and thin. It was obvious he had overindulged in vices. This guy could only last 2 minutes. Lin Xiaofan doubted that Xu Laosan could satisfy any of the 10 strong, healthy women he had chosen. By the standards of this era, those women were considered good options. But no matter how good the land was, a horse that couldn't work was useless, right? While Lin Xiaofan was deep in thought, Li Ermarzi had already been called up. The best women were long gone, and he had to choose from the middle range. Looking at the 5 women Li Ermarzi brought back, Lin Xiaofan had to admit that this man was really something. However, the ages of these women varied significantly. Some were barely teenagers, while others looked much older. Lin Xiaofan recalled some of the memories of the original person. The country had mandated that men must marry multiple women, but they could still be drafted into the military. If a man died in battle, the women who had borne him a son could continue raising the child, while those who hadn't given birth would have to come back to the county government and be chosen again. Lin Xiaofan. Hearing his name called, Lin Xiaofan quickly took a few steps forward. Along with him, there were several other boys around the same age. They were all scrawny, with pale faces and thin bodies, clearly poor kids who couldn't pay any bribes. At this moment, there were barely 10 women left in the center, and the rejected women on the right were hardly touched. The men knew these women were unlikely to have children, so no one dared to take the risk. The other boys rushed over, eager to claim one of the few good women left. Only Lin Xiaofan moved slowly. Lin Xiaofan, hurry up. If you don't grab one, they'll all be gone. Li Marzi shouted anxiously when he saw Lin Xiaofan taking his time. Meanwhile, the county magistrate, seated high up on the platform, was observing the situation with satisfaction, stroking his beard. Not bad, everyone seems quite eager today. Your Excellency, it's all thanks to your wise leadership. Har har. The magistrate laughed heartily and looked at the rejected women, saying with a grin, "These will probably have to go to the pleasure houses." A pleasure house was basically a brothel, where women no one wanted would be sent. Hey, what's up with that kid? The magistrate noticed the one person who wasn't he in a rush. This boy seemed uninterested. Frowning, the magistrate was displeased. Under his leadership, no one should be passive about having children. By the time Lin Xiaofan walked over, the women in the middle were already taken. One scrawny man approached the rejected women, eyeing them with a predatory look, as if they were merchandise. "Sir, please take me back with you. I only eat a little, but I can have sons. Sir, I'm very capable. My mother had 3 sons. Please, sir, take me with you. I'll do whatever you want." The women, seeing a man finally look their way, cried out pitifully, their eyes red from weeping. Some of them even kneeled. Lin Xiaofan looked at them, each one seemed so fragile, with tear-streaked faces and weak bodies, and a heavy sense of responsibility surged within him. These poor women, if I don't step in, who will? Should I save them? Just as Lin Xiaofan was about to step forward with determination, the boy from earlier kicked one of the women hard. Her frail body slid a few steps across the ground, landing face down as she began to sob quietly. "You useless thing, are you trying to mess with me? Look at yourself. You're nothing but bad luck. Do you want me to get beaten up because of you?" Lin Xiaofan stared at the woman who had been kicked. Her small, pale face showed pain, and her sobs grew quieter. "Sis, are you okay?" A familiar voice rang out, and Lin Xiaofan raised his eyebrows in surprise. A smirk appeared on his lips. Of all people, it was her. Li Xiaoqian, his blind date, the woman who had insulted him as a nobody and thrown coffee in his face. "Xiaoqian, I..." The woman who had been kicked groaned in pain, clutching her stomach. She looked up at the man who had kicked her, her eyes full of tears, still hoping to be chosen by him. "Sis, don't beg him." Li Xiaoqian clenched her teeth and glared at the man. If looks could kill, he would have been torn apart hundreds of times. "Oh, little lady, you don't like it, huh?" The man saw the fury in Li Xiaoqian's eyes and grinned. He walked over to them, standing above the 2 women, leering as he scanned their bodies. "Get down. Knock 10 heads, then crawl through my legs, and I'll take both of you." Hearing this, Li Xiaoqian's temper flared. "What kind of man are you?" Before she could finish, her mouth was covered by her sister's hand. Her sister smiled, trying to placate the man. "My younger sister is young and naive, she doesn't know how to speak. Please don't blame her. I'll do what you want, I'll bow right now." With that, her sister pulled Li Xiaoqian to kneel. Li Xiaoqian refused, but her sister warned her in a low voice. "Do you want to go to the pleasure house?" Li Xiaoqian's expression changed. The women who ended up in the pleasure houses were the most miserable. She didn't want that fate. Seeing the 2 women finally compromise, the man puffed out his chest with satisfaction. "Hey, you with no chest, no waist, and no hips. Don't you look at yourself in the mirror? Are you here to make a fool of yourself?" Just as the 2 women were about to bow, Lin Xiaofan suddenly stepped forward. He crouched down in front of them. He gently lifted Li Xiaoqian's delicate chin with one hand, staring at her eyes with a knowing look. You. She had seen Lin Xiaofan earlier and wondered if he was just a look-alike or if he, too, was someone who had traveled through time. But his words made her realize this man was the same nobody from the blind date. If there was one thing Li Xiaoqian regretted the most in her life, it was agreeing to that blind date. She had thought Lin Xiaofan was a decent guy, but who would guess they would end up meeting a bandit and both travel through time? As soon as she recognized him, the mockery in his eyes made her want to slap him. "This officer, my sister, and I only need a little food each day. We're very capable, and we can bear sons. We really can." Please take us in. We'll have many sons, we'll give you as many as you want. Her sister knelt again, but Lin Xiaofan stopped her with a single hand. His gaze never left Li Xiaoqian, and he smiled slyly. Want me to take you both in? Well, it depends. His eyes stayed locked on Li Xiaoqian's. Her sister, noticing this, quickly grabbed Li Xiaoqian's waist and whispered. Beg him. Don't want to go to the pleasure house? Beg him. Li Xiaoqian gritted her teeth and refused to speak. Sir, may I kneel on behalf of my sister? Her sister had tried to force her, but the stubborn girl refused to budge. No need. It seems your sister still doesn't want a poor guy like me. I'll just pick someone else. Lin Xiaofan stood up and dusted off his non-existent clothes. You? Li Xiaoqian, do you want to ruin both of us? Do you really want to go to the pleasure house and be passed around by every man? Her sister glared at Li Xiaoqian, tears in her eyes. She hit her sister in frustration, her face filled with despair. Li Xiaoqian's eyes welled with tears. Looking at her sister, she suddenly collapsed, banging her head on the ground with a loud thud. Please. Take us in. Chapter 3, Only Married 5. Seeing that the woman finally lowered her proud head, Lin Xiaofan didn't feel much joy in his heart. In his previous life, blind dates had been frustrating, and this woman had no manners. A woman who could pour coffee on someone's head for no reason. What kind of upbringing could she have? He could forgive her for the incident, but it was a matter that was now long past. Lin Xiaofan stood up and smiled lightly at the two women, not yet saying he would take them. Master, please, I beg you. The older woman feared that Lin Xiaofan would leave without choosing them. She was at an age where, if no one took her, she would be sent straight to the brothel. All right, I'll take the two of you. Lin Xiaofan generously agreed. Li Marzi, seeing that Lin Xiaofan had chosen the two thinnest women, quickly rushed over to stop him. Xiaofan, are you crazy? Why choose them? Look, they are all right looking, but their figures. Just look at these tiny little asses, and their stomachs are small too. How are they supposed to carry children? These two women definitely can't bear children. Trust me, don't pick them. With your little frame, you won't last under the punishment. Li Marzi's eyes darted as he grumbled. You really shouldn't be so stingy with your money. If you had offered a bit more silver, you wouldn't be forced to pick from the leftovers. Look at those two over there, their asses are a bit bigger, maybe they can have kids? Li Marzi pointed to two women not far away. They were both under 20, slim, wearing patched rough cloth, but their figures were still shapely. Another pair of beauties. Lin Xiaofan swallowed. He didn't know if these people had faulty eyesight. Why was it that these slim-waisted, long-legged women were left unwanted? The two women, hearing themselves being pointed out, looked over with fearful eyes. When they saw Lin Xiaofan, they hesitated, but then pulled another woman with them and came forward. Without a word, they all knelt down and bowed to Lin Xiaofan. Master, we may be thin, but we really can have children. Please, take us home. It wasn't just two women, it was three sisters. It was clear they resembled each other, and though their faces were grimy and slightly dark, their features were well defined. Lin Xiaofan hesitated for a moment, but Li Marzi pulled him back a step. These are three, Xiaofan. No, it's too risky. With your small frame, you can't take the punishment if it's 50 strikes instead of 20. Lin Xiaofan almost rolled his eyes. Why was Li Marzi so sure he couldn't produce children? If one night wasn't enough, he could try twice, or even make it a day and night affair. If he worked hard enough, he didn't believe he couldn't have a child. All right, I'll take all three of you. Ignoring Li Marzi, Lin Xiaofan waved his hand grandly, taking the three sisters as well. When the other women saw Lin Xiaofan was so generous, they rushed over, kneeling and banging their heads, begging him to take them too. Lin Xiaofan was startled. What was going on here? Was this some kind of fervent worship? Li Marzi jumped in fright, taking a couple of steps back to hide behind Lin Xiaofan. The women continued crying and begging, their expressions pitiful and heart-wrenching. Seeing the group of beauties so sorrowful, Lin Xiaofan's sense of responsibility swelled instantly. All right, you can all come with me. Lin Xiaofan had intended to say, come back with me, but his mouth was suddenly covered, and he could hear Li Marzi's anxious voice in his ear. Lin Xiaofan, have you lost your mind? You want to take all these leftovers home. What will you feed them? You planning to feed them shit? Are you out of your mind? With your poor family, do you think you can afford to take so many people back? And with your small frame, do you really think you can handle all of them? Lin Xiaofan thought for a moment. I may have acted rashly. Har har har. At some point, the county magistrate walked over. When he first saw Lin Xiaofan acting slowly, he had thought Lin Xiaofan wasn't he really cut out for this after all. A man should be proactive about taking wives and having children. He had even considered giving Lin Xiaofan a little lesson. But who would have thought, this kid had big ambitions. He wanted to take every leftover woman home. Regardless of whether he could manage them all, just the thought alone was commendable. Kid, this idea of yours is good, but seeing that you're young, let us start with these 5. I'll look forward to hearing your good news. The magistrate said, patting Lin Xiaofan's shoulder with a serious expression and adding with a smile. Don't worry, this is a mandatory selection. You'll have the chance to pick again next year. By then, you can take a few more. Since the magistrate had spoken, Lin Xiaofan had no choice but to relent. When the women saw it was over, 3 of them immediately collapsed in exhaustion. What happened to them? Lin Xiaofan was surprised. Were they really so weak? They fainted just like that. Aren't they at the right age? They weren't picked, so they'll be sent to the brothel. One of the women beside Lin Xiaofan said, her voice choking with tears. Thank you, master, for taking us in. If not, my sister and I would have been sent there too. The brothel wasn't for serving one man, but many. And while Lin Xiaofan appeared frail, it was surely better to serve one man than countless others. The brothel. Lin Xiaofan had no concept of it. In this society, with so many wives, did men really still go to the brothel? Would they even have the energy? Moreover, his wives wouldn't just watch their husband visit a brothel, would they? How about I take them 3 as well? Lin Xiaofan muttered, but Li Ermarzi quickly dragged him away. Take what? The 5 you've chosen are already enough for you. You'll regret it later. Let us go collect the silver. In the end, Lin Xiaofan only took 5 wives home. After receiving 3 taels of silver, Lin Xiaofan couldn't help but feel it was a bit unreal. If someone asked him how far the distance was between marrying into a poor family and ending up with 3 wives and a handful of concubines, Lin Xiaofan would say, all it takes is a time travel. But now that he had the wives, the real problem was how to support them. The government gave him 3 taels of silver, a sum the original owner had never even touched before, but it wasn't enough. It wouldn't even cover their daily needs. He still needed to find a way to make money. After all, a modern man who studied for nearly 20 years couldn't possibly starve to death in ancient times. Chapter 4, Washing his feet by hand. Having just crossed over to this world, not only did Lin Xiaofan gain 5 beautiful wives, but he also received a hefty sum of silver. He suddenly felt that life in ancient times wasn't too bad after all. As for what Li Ermarzi had said about their unsellable goods not being able to bear children, Lin Xiaofan could only chuckle. These people's sense of aesthetics must be flawed. Why would they choose the burly women with their large bodies when there were so many stunning beauties available? It only showed that their taste was poor. Lin Xiaofan wasn't shy at all and accepted what was offered. Forget about whether one could have children, it mainly depends on the man. Just look at modern-day female celebrities, who are so thin they almost look skeletal. But aren't they all having children one after another to marry into rich families? The original owner of this body had been a coward. At just 16, he'd never been with a woman. When he was suddenly told to choose wives, he was so excited that he couldn't sleep for several days. To his surprise, men who couldn't produce sons were beaten to death by a board, and some even died from the shock. How cowardly was that? Well, it worked out for him in the end. As he walked in silence, Lin Xiaofan thought to himself, and the beautiful women quietly followed behind, their heads lowered in deference. They finally arrived at the house. When Lin Xiaofan saw the yard, he was taken aback. The yard was barely enclosed with a few broken tree branches, and from a distance, he could see a few dilapidated thatched houses. There was obviously no proper gate to the yard. It was simply a rudimentary fence made of tree branches and bound together with grass ropes. Lin Xiaofan felt a sense of shock. Were the common people in this era really this poor? Is this our home, husband? Li Xiaoqian's sister was equally shocked upon seeing the yard. How could such a rundown place exist? It looked even worse than the simplest yards in their village. Yes. With the ongoing wars, life is tough for everyone. This is how things are for most people. As a man, Lin Xiaofan felt the need to comfort his wives, but before he could finish his sentence, he heard Li Ermarzi calling from a distance. Xiaofan, if you need anything, just let your uncle know. If I can help, I certainly will. Don't be shy. Lin Xiaofan turned around to look at Li Ermarzi, only to see the grand stone courtyard behind him. His mouth twitched in frustration. Damn it. So it wasn't he that everyone in the village was poor, it was just him who was the destitute one. Lin Xiaofan thought about it carefully, and it seemed like he really was the village's poorest resident. In this era, where men were superior to women, those with multiple wives managed to keep their homes in order. Li Ermarzi's grand stone courtyard had been built by his several wives. Husband, don't worry. In the future, we will build a yard bigger and more grand than that one. Another woman kindly reassured him. She stepped forward, bent down to untie the rope of the yard gate, and led the way inside. Lin Xiaofan felt that she had stolen his words, but since she had already given him a way out, he didn't hesitate to take it. Lin Xiaofan, you really are pathetic. Just as Lin Xiaofan was about to enter, Li Xiaoqian came up to him, sneering with a mocking smile. Back in modern times, you had no car, no house, no savings, and now that you're here, it's the same story. Lin Xiaofan, the government gave you wives, true, but you greedily took 5 of them. Do you think you can afford to support them all? Lin Xiaofan turned to face her and saw the disdainful look on her face. This woman's mouth was as nasty as her attitude. Lin Xiaofan stared at her, and Li Xiaoqian, thinking she had gotten the upper hand, sneered and said, "What?" No retort. HMPH, a poor man like you is just bad luck for me. Lin Xiaofan ignored her and stepped into the yard, where he found the 4 women already busy at work. Some were sweeping the yard, others were taking out bedding to air, washing clothes, and one woman was heating water. When she saw Lin Xiaofan, the woman heating water gave him a flattering smile. Husband, please sit down and wait for a moment. The water will be ready soon. She rushed over, helped him to the only bench in the yard, and carefully sat him down. Husband, sit here for now. Later, I will go chop some bamboo and make a lounge chair. You'll be able to sunbathe in comfort. Lin Xiaofan felt something was off. As the woman helped him sit, her soft body brushed against his arm, and the faint fragrance of her skin combined with her sweet, soft voice calling him husband made Lin Xiaofan feel a twinge of desire. Lin Xiaofan raised his hand and placed it on her delicate hand, causing her body to stiffen. Her face turned red as she lowered her head. Husband, I noticed that we don't have enough bedding. Should I have Cici bring some from my house? The woman who had been washing clothes timidly asked. Husband, I have some at my house too. Shall we bring it together? Li Xiaoqian's sister immediately joined in. Lin Xiaofan glanced at the bedding already hung out to dry. There was only one set, and while it had been enough for the original owner to sleep alone, it was clearly insufficient now that there were 5 women. He nodded. All right, please help me with that. Husband, are you trying to make us die of shame? The moment Lin Xiaofan spoke, the women all trembled, nearly falling to their knees. Lin Xiaofan didn't immediately understand what was going on. You? Husband, you've already given us a place to stay. We're so grateful. Taking care of you and ensuring you live a good life is our responsibility. Please don't say such things again. I'll go and bring the bedding now. Lin Xiaofan was left speechless. Isn't it the man's responsibility to support the family? Why did it seem like the roles were reversed? 3 graceful figures hurried off, and soon the yard was left with only the woman who had been washing clothes and the one who had been heating water. Lin Xiaofan still hadn't fully processed the situation. Husband, my name is Liu Shisha, and this is my younger sister, Cici. The one who just left is my second sister, Yang Yang. Liu Shisha. Lin Xiaofan was taken aback. The name sounded very similar to a famous modern actress. When he looked at her closely, aside from her slightly darker skin, her facial features were exquisite, rivaling even the most popular actress in terms of beauty. Lin Xiaofan couldn't help but sigh at his luck. A man who had difficulty finding a wife in the modern world, now in ancient times, had 5 beautiful wives. Who would have imagined? Husband, the water is ready. While Lin Xiaofan was lost in thought, Liu Cixi had already boiled the water. She ran inside, poured a bowl of hot water, and carefully brought it to Lin Xiaofan. "Husband, you must be thirsty after working all morning. The water is cool enough now." Wow, this treatment made Lin Xiaofan feel a bit overwhelmed. But what he didn't expect was that Liu Cixi had brought a wooden basin. She first poured in hot water, then added some cool water, testing the temperature carefully. After confirming it was just right, she placed the basin in front of Lin Xiaofan's feet. Was she about to wash his feet? Having such an intimate service from a beautiful woman left Lin Xiaofan slightly stunned. "Cixi, you don't have to do this." Before Lin Xiaofan could finish his sentence, Liu Cixi had already lifted his foot, carefully removed his worn-out shoes and socks, and gently rolled up his trousers before placing his foot in the warm water. She repeated the process with the other foot, ensuring both feet were soaking in the pleasantly warm water. Lin Xiaofan still hadn't quite come to his senses. Could a man who had been single for 30 years in his previous life really enjoy such attention from a beautiful woman? Chapter 5, A Man's Paradise. The woman's soft hands gently rubbed his feet. The sensation was ticklish, the pressure neither too light nor too heavy. Whether it was due to the hot water or something else, Lin Xiaofan's ears turned faintly red. Liu Cixi kept her head lowered, her face flushed all the way to her ears. Since she became aware of the world, this was the first time she had been so intimate with a man. "Hubby, the water's not hot anymore." Liu Cixi pouted slightly and blew on the hot water in the bowl. Occasionally, she parted her lips to take a small sip to test the temperature. When she was sure it was no longer too hot, she gently asked, "Hubby, the water's cool enough now, should I serve it to you?" Seeing her expectant gaze, Lin Xiaofan unconsciously nodded, swallowing a lump in his throat. Liu Cixi leaned slightly forward and held the bowl to Lin Xiaofan's lips, signaling for him to drink. Lin Xiaofan absent-mindedly opened his mouth, and the water was indeed perfect, neither too hot nor too cold. It was just plain boiled water, but it tasted subtly sweet, and Lin Xiaofan thought it was even sweeter than water with honey. After taking 2 sips, Liu Cixi took the bowl away, raised her sleeve, and gently wiped his lips before handing the bowl back to him. Lin Xiaofan felt a bit dizzy, overwhelmed by how pampered he was. Were ancient men always treated this well? One beautiful woman feeding him water, and another carefully massaging his feet. This was a life more luxurious than any emperor could dream of. After finishing the water, Liu Cixi was perspiring lightly, her fragrance lingering in the air. Lin Xiaofan felt a bit short of breath, his mind slightly foggy. "Hubby, let me give you a foot massage." At this point, Liu Cixi had finished washing his feet. She dried them and then took a small stool to sit in front of him and began massaging his feet. Lin Xiaofan thought to himself, this service was truly a complete package. At that moment, Li Xiaoqian and her sister returned. When they saw Lin Xiaofan sitting in the chair like a grandmaster with a woman massaging his feet, Li Xiaoqian was furious. She pointed at Liu Cixi and scolded, "You? How can you be so lowly and shameless?" As soon as she finished speaking, a loud slap echoed through the air. Li Xiaoqian turned to her sister in disbelief. "Sis, you hit me." The things in their hands fell to the ground, but no one cared about them now. Liu Cixi and Liu Cixi glared at them angrily. Li Xiaoqian's sister quickly grabbed her and knelt down. "Hubby, please forgive her. My sister is young and doesn't know how to speak properly. Please, don't send her away." "Sis, why are you begging him? Look at his house, it's so poor. He has nothing. You..." Before Li Xiaoqian could finish, her sister slapped her several times across the face. "What nonsense are you talking about? Li Xiaoqian, if you want to die, go die on your own. Don't drag me into it. Hubby, he's just barely of age, and he never had a wife before. How could his family be well off? Now that we are here, everything will get better for our family. Hubby, please don't mind my sister. She's not bad-hearted, just a little immature. I promise to discipline her properly." Her sister started kowtowing, hitting her forehead on the ground with force. After just a few kowtows, her forehead was bruised, and it looked alarming. Lin Xiaofan just gave Li Xiaoqian a glance and smiled lightly. "My little yard is indeed too poor to accommodate such a great Buddha like you. Miss Xiaoqian, I suggest you seek a better place." As soon as Lin Xiaofan said this, Li Xiaoqian's sister's face turned pale, and she quickly kowtowed several more times. Choking back tears, she pleaded, "Hubby, please don't do this. Xiao Qian is still young, and I only have one sister. Please, give her another chance. Sis, please don't." Before Li Xiaoqian could say anything, her sister covered her mouth, scolding her angrily. "Quickly apologize to hubby. Beg him to keep you. Do you want to die?" Li Xiaoqian's face turned white as she recalled what her sister had told her earlier. In this era, women had three paths. The first was to be taken home by a man, and as long as she could bear a son within 4 years, she could survive. The second was to become a prostitute in a brothel, where women had to produce a son within 5 years, or face death. The third was to be cast out of the home, becoming a discarded woman with no status, easily picked up by another man and reduced to a plaything. Her fate would be worse than a brothel woman. The thought of this terrified Li Xiaoqian. Even though she had been here for a few days, she still hadn't adapted to the harsh reality of this society. This place felt like heaven for men, where they could take as many wives as they wanted, but for women, it was like hell. Here, women were nothing but breeding machines. Everything was determined by the ability to bear sons. If a woman couldn't, she might not even have the chance to survive. Li Xiaoqian touched her swollen face and suddenly wanted to cry. She felt wronged. She hadn't done anything terribly wrong, she just went to a matchmaker to find a husband, and now she found herself in this nightmare. She wanted to go home. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and Li Xiaoqian looked up at Lin Xiaofan with her tearful eyes, sobbing uncontrollably. Seeing the blood stains on Li Xiaoqian's forehead from the kowtows, Lin Xiaofan's heart softened. He thought for a moment he had just married, and his family was in shambles. Another person in the house meant more hands to work. If he sent Li Xiaoqian away, it would also create a rift in his relationship with her sister. However, if she ended up doing nothing at home, he would never let her off the hook. "All right, everyone get up." Lin Xiaofan waved his hand, and at that moment, Liu Yangyang walked in, holding a large bundle of things. "Hubby, I'm back. Look at what I brought." Lin Xiaofan looked up in surprise. The fragile-looking girl was now carrying a full load: blankets, clothes, even pots and pans. Liu Shisha and Liu Sisi hurriedly stepped forward to take the load, grumbling, "Good job, Yang Yang. You remembered to bring everything. By the way, did you bring the rice we had left?" "I did. I saw that hubby's family didn't have much food, so I brought the little bit of rice we had. It should last us a couple of days." Lin Xiaofan felt a little ashamed. His family was so poor that they barely had enough food to eat. No wonder Li Ermarzi had said, "Why are you bringing them home? Are you planning to starve them?" Although his words were harsh, they were not wrong. With no food, how could he afford to feed all these wives? Although he had some silver in hand, it wouldn't last long, so he needed to find ways to improve his living conditions. These beautiful women were now his wives, and he wanted to give them a good life. He would start with making sure they had enough to eat and a roof over their heads. Lin Xiaofan looked at the thatched cottages and thought to himself that they needed some serious repairs. At the very least, they needed to keep out the wind and rain. As for food, relying only on silver wouldn't be enough. He needed to find ways to earn money. Cutting back on expenses wouldn't improve their quality of life. The key was to increase their income. Chapter 6: Unable to control himself. According to the current market price, the low-grade grain on the market is 400 yuan per stone, the ordinary grain is 500 yuan per stone, and the high-grade grain is 600 yuan per stone. Usually, everyone eats ordinary grain and low-grade grain. 1 stone is 120 jin. With his 3 taels of silver, he can buy 720 jin of ordinary grain. Ancient people did not consume so much meat and vegetables. An adult would eat 3 jin a day. There are many women in his family, so he would calculate it as 2 jin. Lin Xiaofan was a little embarrassed. 6 people would need 12 jin a day. These 3 taels of silver would only be enough for them to eat for 2 months. This is just eating grain, and meat and other things are not counted. This is not acceptable. He married 5 beautiful wives when he came to ancient times. He didn't want them to suffer with him. He wanted them to live a good life. If this happened in modern times, let alone 5, even if he married any one of them, he would wake up laughing in his dreams. They are so delicate, beauties are meant to be loved and pampered, and it is his responsibility as a man to make them happy and satisfied. First, set a small goal: let the beautiful wives eat meat every day, and then build a two-story villa of several hundred square meters, at least 100 times more magnificent than Lee Ermars's house. He also has to make a few signs, and every night he will look through the wives' signs to decide who will serve him. Just thinking about that life makes him happy. Lin Xiaofan was thinking happily, when suddenly a pair of soft and boneless little hands appeared on his shoulders, kneading gently, with the right amount of strength, and Lin Xiaofan closed his eyes comfortably. "Husband, are you still tired now? Do you want me to help you knead it well?" Liu Shishi's delicate baby voice rang in his ears, and the faint virgin fragrance of the woman's body came to his nose. Lin Xiaofan only felt like an electric current running through, and his tailbone was numb. But the woman behind him was still unaware, her soft body rubbing against his back, causing Lin Xiaofan's cheeks to heat up slightly and his body to tense. This little devil! Lin Xiaofan suddenly opened his eyes and turned to face Liu Shishi's charming phoenix eyes. Lin Xiaofan's eyes were dark and his voice was low. "Pinch? Sure, but I want to." He stretched out his hand and hooked Liu Shishi's neck, gently pulled, and kissed her red lips. "Hook me again, and I'll do you now." Liu Shishi was frightened and her body went limp. She almost fell down. Fortunately, Lin Xiaofan was quick-witted and held her slender waist with one hand to stabilize her body. "Husband! Husband! It's still daytime." Liu Shishi's cheeks were red, but Lin Xiaofan smiled faintly. "Har har, I was just kidding, look how scared you are." He stretched out his hand calmly, one hand still hooked on Liu Shishi's waist. "This woman's waist is really thin. I really don't know what those men think. Isn't this kind of willow waist that can be held in one hand good? Why do they only like thick and strong barrel waists? Such a delicate beauty has no one to pamper," so he accepted it without hesitation. Gurgle gurgle. The atmosphere was just right, and Lin Xiaofan's stomach made a sound. The original body was weak and sick, and there was not much food at home. Usually, he had to eat one meal and not the next. In the few days before he traveled through time, he didn't eat well, otherwise he wouldn't be so weak that he was scared to death when he was excited. Seeing that all the women looked at him, Lin Xiaofan touched the back of his head and smiled awkwardly. "Har har, I'm going to get a wife, so I'm a little excited. I haven't eaten yet, and I'm a little hungry." At this time, he was so embarrassed that he wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. When Liu Yangyang heard this, she hurriedly said, "Husband, my sister and I will cook for you right away." After that, Liu Yangyang took out the coarse grains she had just brought and walked into the kitchen. Liu Cixi also followed in to help. It's called a kitchen, but it's actually a shabby little thatched house with a big pot inside. With gusts of wind blowing, the shaky thatched house also swayed slightly with the wind. Looking at this, I don't know how many days it can last. Maybe this small kitchen will be blown away when the wind is strong. With such conditions, if it were placed in modern times, which woman would be willing to live a hard life with him? But Liu Yangyang and Liu Cixi didn't dislike it at all, and walked in with the coarse grains. Husbands don't dislike that they are not good at giving birth, so how can they dislike their husband's poor conditions? "Husband, please sit down for a while, don't tire yourself out." Seeing her two sisters go to cook, Liu Shishi advised with some concern. After all, Lin Xiaofan looked too weak, as if she could be blown down by a gust of wind. She didn't want to be a widow on the first day of her marriage. Lin Xiaofan was about to pat her chest and say that it was okay, but suddenly she felt dizzy in her head, so she took back the words on her lips and sat back obediently. Li Xiaoqian's sister pulled Li Xiaoqian into their house and continued to clean up the house. Liu Shishi gently massaged Lin Xiaofan's shoulders, and the breeze blew gently, and the faint fragrance of the woman came over. This was a scene he didn't dare to think about in his previous life. Lin Xiaofan squinted comfortably and then fell asleep. After an unknown period of time, Lin Xiaofan slowly woke up. The table in the house had been moved in front of him, and several women were quietly guarding around the table. Only Li Xiaoqian looked at him with unkind eyes. Why does he, a loser, live such a good life? And have so many beauties to serve him? Seeing him wake up, the others hurriedly said, "My husband is awake, do you want to eat something now?" Lin Xiaofan nodded woodenly. Then a large bowl of hot rice was brought in front of her. Because the family was relatively poor, there was not even a wooden bowl, only a broken rice bowl. He hadn't eaten for several days, and he instinctively pulled the bowl to eat. The moment he put it in his mouth, Lin Xiaofan frowned. For him who was used to eating modern food, coarse grains were very difficult to swallow and had no taste. What's wrong, my husband? Is the rice not cooked well? Or is it cold? Liu Cixi asked nervously, fearing that Lin Xiaofan would get angry and drive her out. In fact, she was not sure in her heart. She had been cooking since she was 7 or 8 years old, and had 10 years of experience. Logically, there shouldn't be any problems. Husband, Cixi may not have performed well this time, please don't chase her away. She will pay attention next time. Liu Yangyang also hurriedly begged for mercy for her sister. Liu Shisha suddenly stood up, grabbed her 2 sisters in one hand, and knelt down with a plop. Husband, please don't chase us away. My sister will pay attention to cooking in the future, please forgive her this time. She was about to kowtow, and the 2 sisters saw their sister kneeling down, and hurriedly kowtowed together. Chapter 7. Why are you crying again? I'm not angry, the rice is delicious. I just haven't eaten such delicious rice for a long time, and I'm still a little uncomfortable. Lin Xiaofan explained, and then waved to them, and Liu Shisha came over timidly and walked to Lin Xiaofan's side. Lin Xiaofan held her hand and asked her to sit down beside him. He looked at her slightly swollen forehead and her big red eyes, like a frightened little white rabbit. There were still tears on her small face. He raised his hand and gently wiped them for her. Then, Lin Xiaofan began to eat with big mouthfuls. Because he hadn't eaten for a long time, after the initial feeling of difficulty in swallowing, he began to eat voraciously. It was just a simple coarse grain, but it tasted very good. Li Xiaoqian also took a spoon, scooped a mouthful of rice and ate it, and then frowned. She has always been spoiled, so naturally she can't eat this kind of coarse grain. She was about to say something, but she didn't want to be slapped by her sister again. Li Xiaoqian turned her head away, with 3 parts of confusion, 3 parts of anger, and 4 parts of grievance in her eyes. What's wrong with me? Didn't I just eat a mouthful of rice? Why did you hit me again? Lin Xiaofan was also a little confused, staring at the 2 of them blankly. Seeing Lin Xiaofan looking over, Li Xiaoqian's sister thought he was going to blame her, and she became even more anxious. She pulled Li Xiaoqian's hand and knelt down to teach her a lesson. Your husband didn't let you eat, how dare you eat directly? You even forgot this little rule. Lin Xiaofan frowned and sorted out the original owner's memory. After a few seconds, he remembered a rule of Daqian. In Daqian, men are superior to women, and women can only eat after men have finished their meals. Eating without a man's consent is cheating, and they can be beaten to death. Usually, only women with children are allowed to eat together. How can several women break the rules when they just entered the door? Lin Xiaofan sighed. When Li Xiaoqian's sister heard Lin Xiaofan sigh, she thought she was extremely disappointed with the 2 of them, and she became even more anxious. She raised her hand and slapped Li Xiaoqian, ready to teach her a lesson. It's okay, you can eat together, there are not so many rules here. Lin Xiaofan quickly stopped her. After hearing this, the beauties looked at each other, but no one took action. After a long time, Liu Cixi finally said, Husband, you eat first. We are not hungry. We will eat later. But just after she finished speaking, someone's stomach grumbled. Liu Cixi's face turned red, and she lowered her head hard, ashamed that she wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Lin Xiaofan frowned. He knew that it was impossible to persuade them with kind words, so he could only be tough. Come and eat together quickly, I will get you chopsticks. As he said, Lin Xiaofan walked back into their house and took out several pairs of spoons and chopsticks according to the original owner's memory. Fortunately, Li Ermeizi left a few pairs when he came to his house as a guest, otherwise he would not even have extra chopsticks for eating. Seeing Lin Xiaofan bring the chopsticks himself, the women turned pale. Husband, no, no. We just got married, how can we eat with you? Since you have entered my house, you have to listen to me, understand? Lin Xiaofan spoke. Yes, we will listen to everything, husband, as long as you don't drive us away. Several delicate beauties spoke first. Lin Xiaofan then said firmly. In that case, I order you now to eat quickly. The women looked at each other, then nervously picked up the spoon, scooped a little rice, and ate it very carefully, eating only a little at a time, for fear that they would be disliked if they ate too much. Soon, several people finished a bowl of rice, and even scraped the bottom of the bowl clean. Seeing this, Lin Xiaofan was ready to get another bowl of rice. Several women hurriedly stood up to stop him. Husband, just sit down. We'll go get the food. Leave this little thing to us. Lin Xiaofan knew that he couldn't get away with it, so he sat down obediently. Soon, another bowl of hot rice was served. Lin Xiaofan still asked them to eat together as usual. After 2 bowls of rice, they were 6/10 full. Liu Shisha, who hadn't eaten such a good meal for a long time, burped. They hadn't eaten half full for a long time. In this era, food was scarce, men were superior to women, and it was good enough for women from ordinary families to hold onto their breath and not starve to death. Eat and drink enough. That's too much. They used to eat very little at home and were hungry all year round, otherwise they wouldn't be so thin. Woo woo woo. Lin Xiaofan burped. Although the coarse grains didn't taste good, they were very filling. Suddenly hearing a cry, Lin Xiaofan looked in surprise, but saw that it was Liu Shisha. Shisha, why are you crying? Lin Xiaofan stepped forward and lifted her chin with one hand, only to see that her eyes were red and tearful, her nose was twitching, her skin was smooth and delicate, and her face was so clean that you could hardly see the pores, which made her look particularly pitiful. Especially when she looked at him, she looked like she was bullied, which made Lin Xiaofan feel itchy in his heart, and he wanted to do it to this little girl right now. This little girl was too tempting. Lin Xiaofan said that he couldn't resist her after being single for 30 years. The key point was that this was his wife, the kind that he could pull to play poker legally at will. Husband, I'm just too touched, husband, I will definitely work hard to repay you in the future. Liu Shisha said that she shed more tears. In her memory, her father had never been so good to her mother. But her husband? Today was the first time she came over, and her husband asked her to eat at the table and wiped her tears gently. Woo woo woo, husband, don't worry, Shisha won't let you down. It's her blessing to meet such a good man. Liu Shisha thought of the rumors outside. She seemed to have made up her mind. She looked at Lin Xiaofan with burning eyes and said firmly, after 3 years, if we sisters are not pregnant, we will commit suicide and will never let you down. Husband, I know we are unsellable goods and no one wants us. We will be very happy if you can take us in. Xiao Qian and I will be the same. If we can't give birth to a son, we will never let you down. Li Xiaoran also sobbed and spoke, but Li Xiaoqian lowered her head, not knowing what she was thinking. Lin Xiaofan pulled her over and held her in his arms, hugging her left and right, one on each side. Looking at the 2 tearful beauties, he exclaimed, who told you that not being able to give birth to a son is a woman's problem? Chapter 8 Don't hit yourself. Several beauties were stunned, especially the 2 in his arms. Their cheeks were flushed and they were sobbing softly. When they heard this, they even forgot to cry. They stared with their eyes wide open, looking confused. Liu Sisi was the fastest talker. She asked blankly, husband, it's not a woman's fault if you can't give birth to a son. Can you blame the man? After she finished speaking, she slapped herself in the face with quite a bit of force. There was only a pop sound, which was very crisp. I'm sorry, husband, I didn't mean to doubt you. Just now, she was just quick-witted and definitely didn't doubt her husband's ability. Looking at her frightened face, Lin Xiaofan was also helpless. In their hearts, all mistakes are women's fault. This idea has been deeply rooted. It will definitely not be a matter of a day or a night to change. Don't hit yourself. Lin Xiaofan's face changed, he let go of the 2 beauties in his arms, walked to Liu Sisi's side, looked at her slightly red face, gently stroked her, and said softly, Sisi, you are my woman, remember everything on you belongs to me, don't hit yourself without my permission, understand? Liu Sisi looked at Lin Xiaofan in disbelief, but her heart was moved. Although this man looked thin and weak, his words shocked her heart. It seemed that as long as he was there, they didn't have to worry about anything, he would protect them from wind and rain. Giving birth to a son is indeed not related to women, it mainly depends on men. Don't worry, whether you have a son in 4 years or not, I won't let you get into trouble. Besides, you have to believe me, I will definitely let you have a son. Liu Sisi's face was red, and she lowered her head shyly. Lin Xiaofan looked at the beauties and said solemnly, since you have come back with me, you are all my wives, so you must listen to me in the future. I don't care what the rules are outside. In our house, we eat together and work together. And the most important thing is that you can't beat yourself up at every turn, understand? The women nodded and said yes. Seeing that they were so well behaved and obedient, Lin Xiaofan smiled with satisfaction. After eating and drinking, he set rules for the little girls and began to think about what to do next. Looking at the extremely simple house, the house was bare and poor, and even thieves were too lazy to come and patronize. Looking at his own clothes, the best one had several crooked patches. Their wives were also wearing tattered clothes, and the clothes were washed so badly that the colors could not be seen. The patches were stacked on top of the patches, and I don't know how many times they were mended. Lin Xiaofan felt distressed and began to plan in his mind. The little money he got from his wife was definitely not enough. Even if he saved more, he couldn't keep it up for long. What he had to do was to make money, not to save money. Money is earned, not saved. Besides, even if they saved more, this little money wouldn't last long. Now that winter was approaching, the house had to be renovated. He didn't want to be cold. As for food, he couldn't always eat coarse grains. That would definitely not be nutritious and not tasty. Meat and vegetables had to be kept up. His wives were too thin. He had to keep them plump. Also, he had to buy 2 sets of clothes for everyone, one for now and one for winter. As for these patched rags, there was no need to keep them. All of this required money. As for how to make money, Lin Xiaofan had no idea yet. He didn't inherit much of the original owner's memory. In addition, the original owner had lived in this small mountain village since childhood and had rarely been to the city, so he knew nothing about the outside world. However, Lin Xiaofan was not afraid. After all, he had been studying for nearly 30 years and graduated from graduate school. He had so much modern knowledge in his head. As a typical science and engineering man, he was good at math, physics and chemistry. How could a little ancient history be difficult for him? "Husband, what's wrong with you?" Seeing that Lin Xiaofan was frowning, several women were very uneasy, and Liu Shisha asked. When Lin Xiaofan came to his senses, he saw that several people looked worried. "It's okay. I'm just thinking about how we're going to live in the future." Lin Xiaofan smiled comfortingly, and Liu Shisha hurriedly said, "My husband, do you know where our land is? What are you planting? I'll go over there this afternoon to take a look and clean it up. We don't eat much. If we exchange silver for coarse grains, we'll definitely be able to survive." Looking at Liu Shisha, who looked sensible, Lin Xiaofan smiled and said, "As for the land, I can take you there to have a look later, but you don't have to eat coarse grains, and you don't have to eat less. Since you followed me, you're my women, and I have to make sure you're well fed and well dressed. You just have to be at ease and give birth to my babies." Lin Xiaofan's words made the women blush. They were all young girls who had never had sex, and suddenly they talked about having children. Even though they knew their future fate since they were young, they still felt a little uneasy when they really heard it. Liu Shisha secretly looked at Lin Xiaofan and saw that he had an excellent appearance. Although he looked thin and in poor health, his face was impeccable. The most important thing was that he was a good person and was good to them. Having a child with such a man did not seem to be a bad thing. When she thought about how to have a child, she felt her cheeks getting hotter. But now the most important thing was how to live. Lin Xiaofan's family was very poor, and the little silver given by the government was not enough for them to eat. "My husband, I believe you. Now we don't have much silver. I think we can use the silver to buy some inferior coarse grains, which are cheaper. I will go and dig some wild vegetables to mix with them, and wait until the crops in the field come down." Because Lin Xiaofan brought back 5 wives, the village would also give them some land. They could plant crops with a short growth period now and then. What? Inferior coarse grains are also added with wild vegetables. Li Xiaoqian has been telling herself to be a deaf mute and not to talk nonsense. Her sister's slap is not vegetarian, but she can't help it and blurts it out of habit. The meal made of coarse grains just now, they all ate happily, but she found it hard to swallow. Is this food for people? Li Xiaoqian, what did you say? Li Xiaoran didn't think much of Li Xiaoqian for a while, but she didn't expect her to start making trouble again. She was so scared that her face turned pale, and she didn't dare to look at Lin Xiaofan's face. Chapter 9. Stop hitting, it hurts. Her sister, I don't know why she suddenly became a different person these 2 days. If those words she said were spread out, I guess neither of them would want to live. Sister, those things that pigs don't eat, do we really have to keep eating them in the future? Li Xiaoqian looked at her sister with a wronged face, but what responded to her was Li Xiaoran's 2 ruthless slaps. Sister, why did you hit me again? And you, Lin Xiaofan, you said you have no money, so you should just stay here and wait for death. Why do you want to marry so many wives? Do you want to starve us to death? This man is simply too much. If I had known that his family was so poor, I would have. With a snap, Li Xiaoran's eyes turned red with anger. But this time it was not her who was beaten. Sister, why did you hit yourself? Li Xiaoqian couldn't believe it, but Li Xiaoran was tearful, looking at her sister with regret. Do you feel wronged here? Li Xiaoqian raised her head stubbornly and looked at her sister with her neck stiff. Do you know what would happen if women like us were kicked out? If we go out, we will be ownerless. We will either starve to death or be captured and become their playthings that can be given away at will. Women like that are worse than prostitutes in brothels. Are you willing to go out? Li Xiaoqian shrank her neck. She was not willing to go to brothels, let alone women outside. Then kneel down to your husband and beg him to forgive you. Li Xiaoqian was not convinced, but she knew her sister would not lie to her. She only hated that the era she traveled through was not good. She couldn't figure it out. It was the same as traveling through time. Other women in novels traveled through time as heroines, the kind with no brains and good times, but when it came to her, why was it? With dark eyes, she turned her head to look at Lin Xiaofan, who looked indifferent. It was all this man's fault. If it wasn't for a blind date with him, how could she go to that cafe? How could she happen to meet a robber? Li Xiaoqian finally fell to her knees with a plop, but she couldn't say a word to beg for mercy. Husband, my sister is young and ignorant, can I plead for her? Li Xiaoran had no choice, because they were sisters. Seeing that Li Xiaoran was about to kneel down again, Lin Xiaofan raised his hand to stop her. No need. No, don't hit me, husband, I can have a baby, I can definitely help you have a baby. Suddenly, a woman's heartbreaking cry came from outside the door. Curious, Lin Xiaofan walked out first, and the women followed. Li Xiaoqian hesitated for a moment and wanted to get up, but Li Xiaoran turned around and glared at her fiercely, so she could only continue to kneel unwillingly. The gate of Lin Xiaofan's house was in name only, and the wall of the yard was simply made of wooden sticks, so the situation outside could be seen clearly. I only saw a woman with disheveled hair and bloodstains on her clothes. She was barefoot and dodging in front of me in a panic. Behind her was a dark and strong man who looked to be in his 40s. The man was holding a broom in his hand and chasing her while shouting, I'll beat you to death, you bitch who doesn't lay eggs. If the woman ran a little slower, the broom would fall on her. There was another blood mark on the worn out and patched clothes. And there were bloodstains on the ground where the woman ran. The bloody footprints looked particularly shocking. The women around Lin Xiaofan shrank back in fear, and their eyes looked outside with a little more fear. The man chased for a while and saw Lin Xiaofan standing in the yard. He smiled and showed his big yellow teeth. Xiaofan, uncle heard that you brought back 5 unsellable goods. Hey, how can you be so short-sighted? What do you do with such women? Hey, I'm not saying anything bad about you, just look at your small body, you can't even withstand 10 strokes, 50 strokes, won't it kill you directly? After saying this, he pulled a toothpick from the chopsticks, spit, and looked at the 4 women around Lin Xiaofan wantonly, and said, Look at what kind of stuff you chose. With this little ass, how can you have a baby? And this small waist, not as thick as my arm. Looking at his presumptuous eyes, Lin Xiaofan took a step forward, her thin body blocked his sight, and said politely, Uncle Darniu, you don't have to worry about this. My woman, whether she can give birth to a son has nothing to do with you. Lin Xiaofan's words made Li Darniu very embarrassed. His face turned black instantly, and he spat at Lin Xiaofan. I am kind enough to consider you, but you dare to talk to me like this, Lin Xiaofan, are you itchy? Looking at his fierce look, Lin Xiaofan was not afraid at all. The original owner was very timid. When he was bullied in the village, he didn't dare to fart, but he was not the original owner, and he was not so cowardly. Shisha, bring the knife. Lin Xiaofan tilted his head handsomely and whispered to Liu Shisha. Liu Shisha was stunned at first, then turned around and ran quickly to the simple kitchen. Soon, the knife with 2 notches was handed over. Lin Xiaofan weighed it in his hand, and gestured in the direction of Li Darniu a few times, with an unbridled smile on his face. This knife is still a little blunt. Looking at the knife, Li Darniu subconsciously took a step back. How come this Lin Xiaofan is completely different from usual? If I had bullied him a few times normally, I would have huddled on the ground and trembled, let alone holding a knife. Alas, I have no parents, my house is broken, and my body is weak. I envy you, you live in a bluestone courtyard, and you can eat enough every day without farming. Uncle Darniu, what do you think is the meaning of my life? Li Darniu's face changed. This Lin Xiaofan is penniless, and he took a few unsellable goods, and he will be beaten to death by the government sooner or later. If he can't think of stabbing himself twice, then humph, marry a few unsellable goods, and you will be beaten to death sooner or later. After saying that, he chased in the direction where the woman ran away. Li Darniu left, but the women were in a very complicated mood. Especially Li Xiaoran, she was overwhelmed when she thought of her stubborn sister. Lin Xiaofan was really good, much better than other men. No matter whether they could have children in the future, at least they could live a good life with Lin Xiaofan for 4 years. Born in this era, as long as they didn't starve to death, they would be satisfied. She would have a good talk with her sister later. Lin Xiaofan was a man, and he would have a temper no matter how good his temper was. Li Xiaoran was so worried, this sister was too worrying. Liu Shisha and the others also had complicated expressions. Thinking of the man they had just seen, and then looking at Lin Xiaofan, they had to say that their luck was really good. It would be even better if they could give birth to a son as soon as possible. Stop hitting, it hurts. There was another loud cry from the woman outside, and the women trembled, but Lin Xiaofan smiled and put the knife back in the kitchen. Let's go and have a look. Most of the people in Lijiazhuang are surnamed Li, and there are only 3 families like Lin Xiaofan. Take the 4 wives out, Lin Xiaofan went directly to the home of the village chief leader. Oh, by the way, at this time, he is not called the village chief, but the head of the village, and he is also the most prestigious person in the village. Seeing Lin Xiaofan coming, Lida looked at the women and showed regret on his face. Hey, Xiaofan, these you chose. The women lowered their heads in shame when Lida looked at them. They were unsellable goods, and everyone knew that they could not give birth to sons. They embarrassed their husbands. Chapter 10, Lin Xiaofan is tricked to death. They are very nice, Uncle Li, let me see what land we can divide. Bringing back 5 women at once, they will starve to death sooner or later with the little money given by the government. Xiaofan, there is not much land in our village. If you don't come earlier, the better land will be picked up by them. The rule in the village is like this, first come first served. But Lin Xiaofan just came here, and his memory of receiving is not comprehensive. He just remembered this. Li Ermaizi was also good to him and seemed to take good care of him, but when it came to the matter of dividing the land, he didn't say a word and ran away secretly. It's okay, Uncle Li, what else does our village have? Lin Xiaofan didn't plan to make a fortune by farming, but he didn't want to give up what belonged to him. It doesn't make sense to say that, come with me to take a look. The land in this era is also divided into grades. There are relatively flat lands, and there are hillside lands backed by mountains. The flat land will be divided into fewer pieces, but the land is fertile and belongs to the first-class good land. Although it pays more grain, the harvest is good. While the hillside land pays less grain, the harvest is too poor, so no one is willing to take the hillside land. Those who came early have already divided up the first-class land. No one wants this piece yet. There is some grass on the land, but not much. Lida pointed to a large piece of sloping land near the mountain and sighed, the land is gone, but I can give you more hillside land. Oh, Xiaofan, you want to plant this kind of land? Li Darniu rushed over when he heard the noise. Just now, Lin Xiaofan, the coward, dared to threaten him with a knife. He was still afraid at that time. Thinking about it, Li Darniu felt aggrieved. If Lin Xiaofan really didn't want to live, he would have fought with him long ago. Why would he say so much? Besides, with Lin Xiaofan's small body, what is there for him to be afraid of? Hearing that Lin Xiaofan came to divide the land, but there was only hillside land, he hurried over to see the joke, dragging a stick in his hand for self-defense. He wanted to get back all the land he had lost just now. Seeing this man approaching again, Lin Xiaofan felt disgusted, but he was too lazy to pay attention. Uncle Li, is there anything else? This piece looks like a lot, but it is too shady. Nothing can grow well in this kind of land. Yes, let's go. Li sighed in his heart. In fact, the hillside land is almost the same, but who made Lin Xiaofan come too late? They walked to the south mountain, and there was another piece of land close to the mountain. This piece was not as good as the previous one. The ground was full of grass. It was a wasteland that had not been planted for a year or two. This piece is also idle. If you want it, I can give it all to you. Lin Xiaofan took a look and looked up at the sun above his head. Although this piece was troublesome to clean up, it was better than the previous position. He did not agree rashly, but walked forward to check. After walking around, he suddenly found that the right side of the land was empty, with only a few weeds. Lin Xiaofan squatted down to observe. Leader came over and saw that Lin Xiaofan seemed interested in this, so he hurriedly advised. Xiaofan, I don't know what's wrong with this half of the mountain. There is no grass growing. Look at the trees on this mountain. There are only a few sparse trees, and most of the leaves are dead. I heard from the older generation that this piece is cursed. Curse? Lin Xiaofan raised his eyebrows. Is there really such a mysterious thing in the world? As a modern person born in New China, he doesn't believe this statement. Har har, Lin Xiaofan, you don't want this piece, do you? Li Daniu saw Lin Xiaofan actually looking at this piece of land, his eyes rolling around, and suddenly he had an idea in his mind. This Lin Xiaofan actually dared to threaten him. Humph, if he doesn't teach him a lesson, he won't be called Li Daniu. Lin Xiaofan, I think you are crazy because of poverty. You want this kind of barren place. You don't think this place is a treasure, do you? Lin Xiaofan reached out and dug some soil, put it to his nose and smelled it. He didn't want to pay attention to Li Daniu, but this man kept buzzing in his ear, which was very noisy. So what if it is, so what if it isn't? Lin Xiaofan looked up at Li Daniu and sneered, what does it have to do with you? You? Li Daniu claimed to be Lin Xiaofan's elder, and Lin Xiaofan didn't give him any face in front of the head of the village. He was immediately angry. HMPH, you really think this broken hill is a treasure? I really don't believe you dare to take it. He looked at Lin Xiaofan provocatively. Young people are the most irritable. Sure enough, Lin Xiaofan's face turned black. None of your business. Hearing Lin Xiaofan's tone, Li Daniu became even angrier, and immediately stiffened his neck and said, Lin Xiaofan, if you dare to choose this hill, I, Li Daniu, will dare to twist my head off and let you kick it like a ball. Hiss, this guy is cruel enough. Don't look at Li Daniu's big and strong appearance, but he is actually very thoughtful. In today's society, there is a great shortage of males. No one cares if a few women die, but if a man dies, the government will send people to check, and the verification is extremely strict. The court does not allow men to die for no reason, let alone die in gambling. Lin Xiaofan looked at him with an expression of looking at a fool, and thought of a way in his heart, sneering. What's the use of your head? Li Daniu, if you are really sincere, bet on silver. When he heard about betting on silver, Li Daniu hesitated. Husband, don't. Liu Shisha thought Lin Xiaofan was just coming to take a look, but she didn't expect that he really wanted this piece of land. She was very anxious. There is no grass growing here, and it's useless for us to take it. Yes, husband, let's take that piece. Li Xiaoran pointed to the weedy place next door. Although it was a bit troublesome to clean up there, at least there were things growing there. Husband, let's not take this piece. Liu Yangyang and Liu Sisi also looked worried. Several women came over and pulled Lin Xiaofan's clothes, looking worried that he would really buy this piece under impulse. Li Daniu was still hesitating. He didn't have much money in his hand. He could talk nonsense, but he would not do something that might lose money. Seeing the attitudes of several women at this time, he suddenly felt a light in his mind. Hillside land also needs to pay taxes. Nothing grows in this piece. Lin Xiaofan is simply looking for death if he takes it. No, he must take it. Okay, let's bet. Just bet 2 taels of silver. If you dare to take it, I will give you 2 taels of silver. If you withdraw in the middle, you have to double it and give me 4 taels. Li Daniu calculated clearly in his mind that this place is barren and grass is not long. Even if Lin Xiaofan took it on impulse, he would regret it after cleaning it up and planting crops for a few days. At that time, I must ask the village head to withdraw the contract, so that I can make a profit without losing money. Xiaofan, don't be impulsive. Lin Xiaofan is alone, and the village head leader is still very caring for him. Fearing that he would agree impulsively, leader also hurriedly dissuaded him. Lin Xiaofan, you won't dare, right? Li Daniu was afraid that Lin Xiaofan would back down. He looked at Lin Xiaofan with disdain and laughed. This land is really not good. If you are afraid to back down, I will not laugh at you for being a cowardly son of a bitch. Chapter 11. You rest and play on the side, let me do it. Li Daniu, how can you talk like that? The village head was a little angry. This Li Daniu was clearly provoking Lin Xiaofan. Lin Xiaofan was already penniless. If he signed this piece of land, wouldn't that be a dead end? This Li Daniu, you can't force people to death. Just when he was about to persuade him again, Lin Xiaofan on the side suddenly spoke. Uncle Li, this piece of land is still okay, but the money for the bet is a little too little. If it's for taels of silver, you can give it a try. For taels of silver? Li Daniu reacted and realized that Lin Xiaofan clearly wanted to take more money from him. But on second thought, 4 taels doubled is 8 taels, and Lin Xiaofan, a poor boy, would definitely not be able to come up with 8 taels of silver by then. Li Daniu looked at the 4 beauties around Lin Xiaofan with lustful eyes. By then, if the money is not enough, women will make up for it. These women can be taken home and played with as they please. It must be said that Lin Xiaofan is really lucky. These women are not bad looking. Except for not being able to have children, there are really no other shortcomings. This kind of woman is definitely not suitable for taking home, but it is okay to play with her. She is prettier and cleaner than the women in the brothel. Thinking of this, Li Daniu felt a burning sensation in his lower abdomen. He wished he could take one home to relieve his anger. Uncle Li, forget it. Before Lin Xiaofan finished speaking, Li Daniu interrupted him. 4 taels, right? That's fine, but if you withdraw in the middle, you have to pay me double, that is, 8 taels, is that okay? Lin Xiaofan nodded, okay. Leader, you testify. Sign the document. This. Xiaofan, how can this be possible? Think about it again. Lida knew that Lin Xiaofan was being cheated. What's the use of renting a piece of land that can't grow anything, even if you get 4 taels of silver? Sooner or later, you have to use it to offset taxes. Leader, Lin Xiaofan has no objection, so don't say more. My husband, don't. Several women wanted to dissuade him, but Lin Xiaofan readily agreed. Okay, but I want cash. Li Daniu's heart was bleeding when he heard this. That was for taels of silver. He had saved for 10 years, but he only saved more than 6 taels of silver. But he still gritted his teeth and agreed to this matter. After all, they are from the same village, and the monk can run away, but the temple cannot. Under the resentful eyes of the women, the document was signed, and both parties and the head of the village pressed their handprints. Li Daniu held the silver in his hand, but when he was about to take it out, he was a little reluctant. Lin Xiaofan snatched the silver, looked at Li Daniu with a painful face, and showed a smile brighter than the scorching sun on his face. Uncle Daniu, thank you for the gift. Lin Xiaofan said and shook the 4 taels of silver in his hand to him. Humph, you'll have to give it back sooner or later anyway. Li Daniu gritted his teeth and said, looking at Lin Xiaofan's big white teeth when he smiled, he wanted to step forward and smash them one by one. Don't worry, you can't wait. He wanted to take the silver back after it was in his hands. He was dreaming. He had never offended Li Daniu, but he kept coming to him to make trouble. He deserved a lesson. Lin Xiaofan was so happy with the huge sum of 4 taels of silver that he couldn't help humming a song. The 4 beauties behind him were not so happy. They were all worried and sad. The land in the village had to pay taxes. The best land had a yield of about 2 sha per mu, and 1/3 of it was paid. 3 mu of land had to pay about 2 sha of grain, while 3 mu of hillside land only had to pay 1 sha, but everyone was still unwilling to plant it. Because the yield was too poor. But the land Lin Xiaofan chose was not even as good as the hillside land. Considering the situation of the land, the village chief calculated that 6 mu of land would be paid 1 sha. The land that Lin Xiaofan contracted was more than 60 mu, and he would have to pay 10 sha next year. When Li Daniu heard this number, he almost laughed to death. 10 sha, Lin Xiaofan could never get so much food. He won this bet. Lin Xiaofan hummed a little song and asked Liu Shisher to go home to get tools first. He ran to the land he contracted and looked left and right. Following Lin Xiaofan, Liu Shisher, who was always steady, was not very calm. She hesitated for a long time and asked tentatively. My husband, these lands are barely passable, but it's useless for you to contract this side. Look at these that can't be killed by the sun, and they can't grow over here. What should we plant in these more than 40 mu of land? Liu Shisha spoke, and her delicate eyebrows were twisted into a knot. The sun-resistant weed is a very strong weed. It can grow very tall on the road that people often walk on, but it can't grow on this land. Looking at her tangled face, Lin Xiaofan smiled slightly, raised his hand and pinched her delicate face. Hiss, it feels really good. Smooth and tender, even smoother than DF chocolate. Husband, I'm talking to you about business. Seeing that Lin Xiaofan was still teasing her at this time, Liu Shisha pouted in dissatisfaction, her face slightly red. From childhood to adulthood, she has never been touched on the face so intimately by a man. Lin Xiaofan smiled, look, this little mouth can hang an oil bottle. Liu Shisha's little mouth pouted even more, and she was extremely worried. I originally wanted to live a peaceful life for 4 years, but now it seems that it is not possible. Okay, Shisha baby, your husband never said that he wanted to plant something here. Lin Xiaofan laughed, Liu Shisha's beautiful eyes widened in surprise, her mouth slightly opened. Not planting anything. Then what did you do with it? Did you just watch it? Are you mentally ill? She only dared to complain in her heart, but didn't dare to say it out loud. Lin Xiaofan suddenly lowered his head and pecked at the red little mouth. It tasted good and sweet. In his past and present lives, he had never even held a woman's hand. Want to seduce me again? Liu Shisha's face turned red. She didn't do anything just now. This person has always been frivolous and would wrongly accuse her. Husband, how could I? Liu Shisha lowered her head in shame, with an attractive blush on her face. You can plant something on the land over there. As for this land, we won't plant anything. Lin Xiaofan has contracted these 60 mu of land for 5 years. When he saw it just now, he had a guess, but he is not sure yet. Really not planting. Liu Shisha still couldn't believe it. Lin Xiaofan smiled confidently. Believe me, there must be good things underground. As they were talking, Li Xiaoran and the others came back with their tools. Li Xiaoqian was also brought over. She lowered her head and hid behind a few people. Lin Xiaofan didn't even look at her. He took a shovel and walked into the mountain with it. Shisha, you guys clean up the land over there. I'll go up the mountain to take a look. Liu Shisha suddenly remembered what Lin Xiaofan had just said, and looked at the bare half of the mountain suspiciously. Is there really something good under here? Forget it, at least they still have some hillside land that can grow crops, so they should clean it up quickly. Yang Yang. She turned to look at her second sister and ordered, you go with me and protect our husband. Liu Yang Yang nodded immediately. She was good at martial arts and had some kung fu. With her protecting her husband, there would be no problem. Lin Xiaofan found the cleanest place. It was extremely dry and there was no grass on the ground. He bent down and started digging a hole. Liu Yang Yang saw it and hurried over to stop him. Husband, are you going to dig here? She was puzzled, but she didn't dare to ask more. Yes. How can you let your husband do such rough work as digging a hole? You can rest and play on the side and let me do it. Chapter 12 There is something underground. Liu Yang Yang said as she pulled Lin Xiaofan aside, then rolled up her sleeves, revealing 2 thin but strong arms, and began to dig. I dug and dug. Soon, a large pile of soil appeared next to the little girl, forming a small mound. Lin Xiaofan, who was pulled aside, held the shovel and looked at the pretty lady sweating profusely beside him. He always felt that the style was a little wrong. It seems that he should be the one working hard. If the single dogs in modern times saw this situation, they would drown him with a mouthful of saliva. Lin Xiaofan suddenly remembered the novels he had read in modern times. Something about traveling through ancient times to become a useless prince, traveling through the desert to live broadcast, etc. It's a pity that he didn't bring anything with him when he traveled through time. If he could also live broadcast, once this scene was broadcast, the whole network would definitely explode. Putting away the messy thoughts in his mind, Lin Xiaofan found that the little girl's face was sweaty. He hurried forward and grabbed her arm. Take a break, let me do it. My husband, Yang Yang, is not tired. The little girl raised her hand and roughly wiped the sweat off her face, with a bright and warm smile on her face. Don't look at me because I'm thin, I'm in good health, look at my arms, they are very strong. She clenched her fists as she spoke, and the muscles on her thin arms bulged slightly. This girl is really muscular. Thinking of his skinny figure like a boiled chicken, Lin Xiaofan was silent. But when Liu Yangyang clenched her fists just now, he seemed to see scars. Lin Xiaofan's eyes darkened, looking at the little woman who was working hard, secretly suppressing the question in his heart. Wait for a chance to ask later. No one can hit his woman, just move a finger. After Liu Yangyang finished speaking, she bent down and continued to dig a hole. Lin Xiaofan knew it was useless to persuade her, so he simply stepped back. He pulled a dogtail grass from somewhere and held it in his mouth. He lay down not far from Liu Yangyang, crossed his legs, and the dogtail grass in his mouth fluttered in the wind. He hummed a tuneless song in his nose, and his eyes drifted to the little beauty who was sweating profusely from time to time. Hiss, don't tell me, it's really a different taste to watch a beauty working like this. He has always wanted to change the thinking of several wives, and want them to stand up straight. At this time, he suddenly realized that maybe he was too narrow-minded. Their wives were so capable, and those ideas were deeply rooted, why did he have to change them? If he worked and let Liu Yangyang rest and watch, she would be worried and frightened. On the other hand, seeing her sweating from exhaustion, her eyes glancing at him from time to time, and the corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl up, Lin Xiaofan suddenly realized. His wives are so good, he should give them a chance to show off. In fact, it's not bad to be a lazy fish. At this time, the sky was particularly blue, the sun was bright, the air was fresh, and the breeze was gentle. Lin Xiaofan crossed his legs and shook the dogtail grass in his mouth, feeling in his heart. Cool. The days in ancient times were really fucking comfortable. Even if the gods came, they wouldn't change. Sister, look at him, he's too much. The four women were tidying up the hillside, but they were also divided into two groups. Liu Shisha and Liu Sisi were in one group, and Li Xiaoqian was with her sister. Li Xiaoqian really couldn't get used to their work here. In the past, she didn't touch the spring water, and her hands were very delicate, but now there are some calluses. Although she was working, her eyes were always paying attention to Lin Xiaofan's direction. Seeing that the guy actually let Liu Yangyang work, but he was lying on the side playing, Li Xiaoqian was so angry that she was about to smoke. This man is really shameless. Li Xiaoran also looked over there, but turned around with a face full of anger. Sister, Lin Xiaofan is really too much, how could he? Do you think he did something wrong? Li Xiaoqian said angrily, but Li Xiaoran patted her head and warned in a low voice. What's wrong with my husband? Serving my husband and helping him with work, isn't this what we wives should do? Sister. Li Xiaoqian didn't expect that her sister was so mean. How could she think so? Shut up. It's our blessing to be able to help our husbands with work. It's our duty as wives to work hard to make money and let our husbands live a good life. Seeing that her sister was still stubborn, Li Xiaoran's pretty face became even colder. Li Xiaoqian, no matter what stimulation you have suffered, I will never beg for mercy for you in the future. I just made it clear to you, and you also know what you will experience if you leave this home. You want to die, I won't stop you, I've been good enough to you. You are not young anymore, you should also be responsible for what you say and do, understand? Li Xiaoqian looked at her sister's face that suddenly became serious, and her heart skipped a beat. Since crossing over, the two sisters have depended on each other, and her sister is really good to her. She didn't dare to think about it. If her sister was gone, how would she live in the future? She didn't dare to think about it, and her hands and feet began to tremble. Sister, Xiaoqian, your husband is really good, and he is very tolerant of you. For the sake of our sisterhood, I remind you that if you leave your husband, you will not live for a few days. With my sister's temper, I guess you won't know how she died. Li Xiaoqian wanted to say no, because she had traveled through time, and she knew a lot of things that people at this time didn't know. But when she thought about it specifically, she couldn't think of any useful information. If you want to stay, bend down, serve your husband well, and listen to him. Li Xiaoran continued to work. She really did her best for Li Xiaoqian. She also wanted to live, and the two sisters lived together. But this sister kept killing herself. Liu Yangyang suddenly exclaimed over there, and Lin Xiaofan got up with a start. The women here heard it and ran over, asking anxiously. What's wrong? There's I can't dig anymore, there's something. Liu Yangyang has been digging a hole. Although the soil above is a little dry and not easy to dig, she can always dig. But now, she can't dig anymore, as if she has dug up a stone. Lin Xiaofan walked over, pulled Liu Yangyang up, jumped down, squatted down, and reached out to touch the stone below. The stone is grayish-white and feels a little warm. This is. Give me the plow. Liu Shisha hurriedly handed it over, and Lin Xiaofan dug a few times. The stone was not very hard, but it was also very troublesome to get rid of it. Husband, let me do it. I'm strong. Liu Yangyang wanted to go forward again, but Lin Xiaofan said, no, let me see what it is. If I guess correctly, this is a good thing for us to make a fortune. Lin Xiaofan was excited, and several women looked at each other. What's so special about the stones under the mountain? Could their husbands be stupid? Li Xiaoqian also came over and stretched her neck to look into the pit. What does Lin Xiaofan mean? This stone can make a fortune. Is there a mine in this mountain? Mine? Thinking of that possibility, Li Xiaoqian's face flushed with excitement. If there is really a mine, then Lin Xiaofan will have money, and she won't have to eat coarse grains, and even have to eat wild vegetables together. Lin Xiaofan, what kind of stone is this? Chapter 13 Stinky Woman, what are you looking at? Li Xiaoqian's eyes were red with excitement. She complained that Lin Xiaofan was too poor and couldn't let her live comfortably. If Lin Xiaofan had money, that would be another story. I don't know yet, I suspect it's a kind of limestone. Hiss, hearing that it might be limestone, Li Xiaoqian took a breath. She's not an idiot, she knows that lime is a good thing, one of the most commonly used raw materials for construction. This should have been needed in ancient times. If there is a limestone mine on the hill that Lin Xiaofan rented, then they will be rich. Really? Then wouldn't we be rich? Li Xiaoqian couldn't help shouting out excitedly. Husband, it can't be. Unlike Li Xiaoqian's excitement, Li Xiaoran had a look of disbelief. Husband, it shouldn't be limestone. Liu Shisha also spoke solemnly, limestone is a good thing, if there is, it would have been dug up long ago, how could it have been left until now? I think it should be a new type of limestone. Don't worry, let's dig some back and do an experiment and we'll know. Limestone ore cannot be used directly, it needs to be processed. The simplest processing method is calcination. But how to burn it and what temperature it is a technical job. Lin Xiaofan played it when he was in school, and later he saw someone digging stones to make lime in a short video, and he watched it several times. Several women still didn't believe it, but Li Xiaoqian was particularly positive. Try it, anyway, this land can't grow crops, just use it as waste. Lin Xiaofan scratched his head, this idiom always felt wrong, but he had no evidence. Several women looked at each other. Although they didn't believe it, as Li Xiaoqian said, there was no loss in trying it, at most they would just put in more effort. Lin Xiaofan wanted to continue to remove the stones, but Liu Yangyang pulled him out. With a tough attitude and a firm tone, husband, how can I let you do such a strenuous job? You should take a break quickly, and don't get tired. Lin Xiaofan, shouldn't I say this? Liu Shisha smiled and said, husband, you should have a good rest. We sisters can do this little thing. The pit was not big, so only one person could go down. However, Liu Yangyang was stronger than Lin Xiaofan, and she dug out several pieces in a short time. Several women picked them up and walked home. In a blink of an eye, only Lin Xiaofan and Liu Yangyang were left here. Lin Xiaofan also picked up a piece, and Liu Yangyang hurriedly stopped him. Husband, you don't need yours, we can do it. I'll go back and see, we need to design an earth kill at home. Hearing this, Liu Yangyang stopped talking. Lin Xiaofan held the grey stone and walked on the small road in the village. Li Ermazi and Li Darniu were talking in the sun on the street, and there was a young woman behind each of them, helping them to pat their shoulders. Hey, Lin Xiaofan, where did you get this stone? You hold it so tightly that someone would think it's gold. What's the matter? Your family is too poor, so you think you treasured this stone. Lin Xiaofan thought to himself, if this stone can really be made into lime, although it is not as valuable as gold, it can be exchanged for silver. Isn't it a treasure? Before Lin Xiaofan spoke, Li Ermazi also spoke. Hey, Xiaofan, I heard that you have leased the hilltop at the entrance of the village where there is no grass. Oh, why are you so confused? How can you lease that piece of land? You should withdraw quickly. Hearing Li Ermei's words, Lin Xiaofan sneered in his heart. You knew that if you went too late, there would be no good land, but you didn't call me, and now you know to be a good person. But his face was normal. Uncle Li, no need, that land is good, I like it. Har har, I said this guy is stubborn, right? Look, he treats that land as a treasure. Li Daniu sneered, looked at the grey stone that Lin Xiaofan was holding, and sneered. This thing, you took it back yourself. What do those wives you brought back do? They are really useless. They are thin and small, but they let you do their work yourself. He sat up straight and slapped the woman's fat butt behind him. Didn't you eat? Give me some force. Par, the slap sounded crisp, and the woman's face was red. She was so old, and she was spanked in public. How could she not be embarrassed? Lin Xiaofan looked at Li Daniu, his eyes turned cold, relying on hitting women to find a sense of existence. This man is really tasteless. Women are naturally meant to be pampered. Are they meant to be beaten? Lin Xiaofan glanced at Li Daniu and sneered, only useless men will beat women. Liu Cixi came out and happened to hear Lin Xiaofan's words. Her nose was sore and her eyes were red. She looked up at the sky to prevent tears from falling. Har har, pamper women. Lin Xiaofan, are you mentally healthy? What are women? Pamper them. Not beating them is a gift to them. Li Daniu snorted angrily, and Li Ermei hurriedly changed the subject. Xiaofan, what are you doing with these stones? Just play with them. I want to build a kitchen. You know the kitchen in my house. Speaking of Lin Xiaofan's kitchen, Li Ermei was a little speechless. That should indeed be done. Don't let the wind blow it away. Lin Xiaofan nodded and prepared to go home first. Li Ermei is better than Li Daniu, but not much better, not worth making friends with. Looking up, I saw Liu Cixi, who was still carrying a basket. Husband, Lin Xiaofan smiled at her gently. Go, don't dress up, don't get tired. I will feel bad. Liu Cixi hummed softly and ran away quickly. Lin Xiaofan smiled. Did he do anything? This little girl seems to be shy. Before Lin Xiaofan walked far, Li Daniu said. Pretending. Hey, Xiaofan is stubborn. I told him not to choose these unsellable goods, but he just wouldn't listen. Brother Daniu, what do you think we should do if Xiaofan can't give birth to a son in a few years? With his small body, he can't stand the punishment of the county government. He deserves to die. This kid doesn't know how to respect the elderly at all. Li Daniu was still angry. His 4 taels of silver. He had to watch out for this kid and not let him waste it. That was his money. What are you looking at, bitch? Li Daniu felt that the strength on his shoulder was wrong and turned to look at the woman behind him. But she looked at one direction with her eyes obsessed. That was the location of Lin Xiaofan's dead kid's home. A nameless anger rose up. Li Daniu was furious, raised his big hand like a palm leaf fan, and slapped the woman in the face. You stinky bitch, you dare to look at other men behind my back. I will beat you to death. Chapter 14. There are too many wives, who should I spend the wedding night with first? He raised his foot, pulled off his shoes, and started beating the woman. No, husband, I didn't, I really didn't. The woman ran away while begging for mercy, while Li Daniu, who looked like he was enjoying it, beat her madly, and there was another woman dodging frantically, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. The woman behind him was terrified, and her body trembled with fear. Lin Xiaofan had selected 5 unsellable women who couldn't give birth, and the villagers had known about it for a long time, and everyone was waiting to see Lin Xiaofan's joke. In one afternoon, several women went back and forth several times to carry stones home, and many people in the village saw it and laughed at the joke. Some people were smarter and found a perfect excuse for Lin Xiaofan. His house is too old, he probably wants to clean it up. It's not just the house that needs to be cleaned up, there's also a yard. There aren't many men in the village, but they generally have a proper yard. Lin Xiaofan doesn't have one. The yard is so simple that even livestock can't live there. This statement was agreed by many people, and they wouldn't go over to help, just watch coldly. But let's not talk about anything else. Lin Xiaofan's wives, although they can't have children, they look really good, and their figures are better than those of the girls in the brothel. Some people secretly looked at the women with lustful eyes, and their mouths watered. At this time, Lin Xiaofan had no idea what was happening outside. he found a place in the backyard and started digging a pit to make an earthen kiln. He had studied this thing in his previous life, and it really didn't stump him. When the sun was about to set, Liu Yangyang and the others came back, and without taking a break to catch their breath, they hurriedly snatched the tools from Lin Xiaofan's hands and pushed him aside to rest. Lin Xiaofan. My husband, you've worked hard. Let me massage your legs. Li Xiaoran brought a stool to help Lin Xiaofan sit down, and she knelt in front of Lin Xiaofan. She held his legs and gently massaged them with both hands. Liu Shishi's bare hands gently fell on his shoulders, and she massaged and pressed them for him neither too lightly nor too heavily. While massaging, she asked if the strength was appropriate. Liu Cixi had already run to the simple small kitchen, and soon smoke rose from the kitchen. Liu Cixi's clear voice could be heard. My husband, wait a moment, the water will be ready soon. Lin Xiaofan. They had both worked uphill for most of the day, and the treatment of men and women was too different, right? Your uncle wouldn't even dare to enjoy it like this. Soon, Liu Cixi came over with a basin. Li Xiaoran took the basin very naturally, raised her soft jade hand, put it in her hand to test the temperature, then helped him take off his shoes very skillfully, and gently put his feet into the slightly hot water. Lin Xiaofan took a deep breath comfortably. Don't say, my feet are really tired after working for a long time. It's really comfortable to wash my feet with hot water. The woman's soft and boneless little hands gently rubbed his feet, and there was a pair of small hands on his shoulders pressing gently. This day made Lin Xiaofan sigh again. Ancient times were so good. Li Xiaoqian looked at Lin Xiaofan's face full of enjoyment and gritted her teeth secretly. This poor loser, like herself, is a time traveler. Why can he live so comfortably? But she can only work hard every day. It's not fair. They are all time travelers, but I have to be the brainless heroine. My dear, the water is boiling. I have cooled it in cold water just now. It is neither too hot nor too cold to drink now. You drink some water first. Lin Xiaofan, who was enjoying it with his eyes squinting, heard the voice but was too lazy to open his eyes. Liu Cixi came over quietly and saw Lin Xiaofan slightly open his mouth. Liu Cixi hurriedly brought the bowl with several cracks over and carefully put it to Lin Xiaofan's mouth. Gulp, gulp, Lin Xiaofan was too lazy to even raise his hand. The water fed by the beauty was fragrant and sweet, and it was really delicious. An hour later, Lin Xiaofan finally arranged all the stones. The stones were broken into small pieces. He definitely didn't have to do this job. Even if he wanted to do it, the women would not be happy. As for the firewood, there was some at home, so he just took it over and used it first. After everything was done and the fire was lit, Lin Xiaofan took their wives back to the room after confirming that there was no problem. At this time, Liu Cixi also prepared dinner. A small bowl of mixed grain rice and a large pot of mixed grain porridge. Husband, come and try it. I wonder if it suits your taste. Liu Cixi smiled like a flower. When she was at home before, she cooked the best. So after coming here, she took the initiative to take the responsibility of cooking. Different from the lunch at noon, this time, there were a few more green bamboo bowls on the broken table. These were made from the bamboo that Li Xiaoran had cut in the afternoon. At this time, in the green bamboo bowls, Lin Xiaofan had rice in front of him, and the women had porridge. Lin Xiaofan frowned. Didn't we say that we all eat the same thing? My dear, I'm not hungry. Liu Shishi was afraid that Lin Xiaofan would get angry, so she hurriedly explained. We can just drink some porridge. We used to eat like this, really. Lin Xiaofan looked at her with burning eyes, which made her feel a little embarrassed, but she heard Lin Xiaofan said calmly. I'll change mine to porridge, too. I said that once you enter my house, you must abide by the rules of my house. We all eat the same thing on the table, and we won't make it different. Do you understand? Liu Shishi hesitated. She had a lot to say and explain in her heart, but looking at Lin Xiaofan's serious and handsome face, she didn't dare to say anything. In the end, whether it was rice or porridge, they ate it together. Although the women didn't say much, they were more moved in their hearts. After dinner, Liu Shishi asked quietly, Husband, will we continue to dig stones tomorrow? She was still very uneasy, and she didn't know whether those grey stones could make lime. If not, most of the mountain would be in vain. Go, you guys continue to dig tomorrow. Lin Xiaofan took out the silver. The government gave him 3 taels last time, and today he took another 4 taels from Li Daniu. He now has a huge sum of 7 taels of silver in his hand. Money must be spent, Lin Xiaofan said with a smile. I'll go to the city tomorrow and buy some things. Buy some bedding, the ones we have are too old. I'll buy 2 sets of clothes for each of you, one for now and one for winter. Also, meat and vegetables must be available, you can't eat coarse grains every day. With the money, Lin Xiaofan thought about improving everyone's life. He planned it well, but he found that the girls' faces were not right, and asked in confusion. What's wrong? Is there anything wrong with what I said? The girls shook their heads quickly, and they looked at each other for a few times. In the end, Li Xiaoran stammered and said, Husband, your plan is very good. It's just that it's hard to find work in winter, and there's no place to make money. We'd better save some money to buy some coarse grains and get through this winter first. After saying this, perhaps because she was afraid that Lin Xiaofan would be angry, she hurriedly added, But if you don't want to, then we can go out and find a job to do, and we can make some money to get through it. After listening to this, Lin Xiaofan smiled lightly and said confidently, Don't worry, let me find a way to make money, I have plenty of ways to make money. The few people looked at each other, with a smile on their faces that was uglier than crying, but they could only agree. How could they believe that Lin Xiaofan, a sickly man with nothing at home, said that he could make money? If Lin Xiaofan really had that ability, the family would not be so poor. However, who let Lin Xiaofan be their husband? Even if they didn't believe it, they could only agree. At most, they could think of a way to find some work in winter, but it would be a little cold and bitter. Seeing that the women didn't believe him, Lin Xiaofan's face was serious. Have you forgotten the earth and kill outside? When lime is made, isn't it money? They looked at each other and remembered the stones they dug this afternoon, but those grey stones can really burn lime? Why do they feel so unreal? A few half-broken stones, roasted with firewood, can produce lime. Even playing house is not so casual. Although the women didn't believe it, they also knew that their husbands were doing it for their own good, so they didn't refute it, for fear of undermining Lin Xiaofan's confidence. Okay, don't worry about making money, I'm here. It's getting late, go to bed. Lin Xiaofan also wanted to make his women worry. It's normal for them not to believe him now. When the lime is burned out, they will believe it. Lin Xiaofan yawned. He was busy all day and he was really tired. It's just. In the past, people would agree with him after he finished speaking, but today, it seems that something is wrong. Lin Xiaofan looked up suspiciously, but so that the 5 little women all lowered their heads, their palm-sized faces were red, and their little hands were pinching the corners of their clothes. No one dared to look at him. What's wrong with this? Lin Xiaofan, a single dog who has been single for 30 years and has never been alone with a woman, said he didn't understand. Husband, tonight is our wedding night, you see, who will be with you first? Finally, it was Liu Shisher who asked with a red face and a mosquito-like voice. Chapter 15 Being Despised. After a good night's sleep, Lin Xiaofan was aroused by the smell of food. After Liu Shisher asked last night, he was so shy that he almost found a crack in the ground to crawl into. Lin Xiaofan, a single dog from birth, was also confused by the question. 5 beautiful wives were married back, and there were fertility indicators, but who to be with first was really a technical job. Besides, they just met today, and although they thought about it for a long time, they were still not familiar with each other. He looked at several wives with their own merits with his eyes, holding his chin with one hand. Who should he choose? Well, this is a difficult question. Lin Xiaofan said that he was under great pressure to play poker together without any feelings just for the sake of having a baby. But his wives are really beautiful. In the end, Lin Xiaofan gave each of them a loving hug, with a smile on his handsome face. Don't rush for the bridal chamber, let's talk about it after we get familiar with each other. Liu Shisher was very nervous at first. Although she knew that she was going to give birth to a child for Lin Xiaofan, she didn't dislike him. But she was still nervous when she really went into battle. Hearing Chen Fan say that there was no rush for the time being, the stone in her heart finally fell. Several women didn't expect Lin Xiaofan to be so considerate. Having a child is not something that can be done in a few days, so it's better for them to get familiar with each other first. Therefore, Lin Xiaofan, who married 5 wives, was still single on his wedding night, and there was no one to warm the bed. Husband, let's buy some inferior food first, we can eat it anyway. It was agreed that he would go to the town by himself today, but the wives were worried. They were afraid that Lin Xiaofan would spend all the 7 taels of silver. Liu Shishi was even more stubborn and asked for the silver, saying that she would keep it for him. Looking at the housekeeper, Lin Xiaofan insisted. Along the way, Liu Shishi's little mouth never stopped. She kept telling him how to save money and run the household. Lin Xiaofan looked at her with a smile, thinking to himself that this woman couldn't stop eating. Wasn't she thirsty? This little mouth actually tasted really good. His eyes moved slightly. Although he couldn't really eat it now, he could still ask his wife for some benefits. Be careful. Lin Xiaofan suddenly spoke, and Liu Shishi opened her mouth in surprise, her eyes rolling around. Just when she didn't understand what was going on, someone held her waist and gently pulled her into a warm embrace. Then, the lips were warm and the man's domineering breath came to her face. Liu Shishi's face was burning with shame. Her husband. This is on the street. What if someone sees her? She pushed Lin Xiaofan with her little hand, but Lin Xiaofan was also a man who knew what to do. He just tasted it and soon let her go. It's much quieter now. Liu Shishi, does my husband think she's too long-winded? She murmured and glared at him, shy and timid, and was particularly attractive. Lin Xiaofan's eyes were dim, and his Adam's apple rolled a few times. This little girl is really attractive. Sooner or later, I will do you a hard job. Feeling that people were looking at him, Lin Xiaofan took a deep breath and said in a slightly hoarse voice. Let's go and buy food first. Lijier village is not far from the town, only 10 kilometers. Although there are few hills in the middle, a normal farmer can walk there in about an hour. However, Lin Xiaofan's body was too bad, and the speed of the two slowed down. After walking for an hour and a half, they saw the outline of the town. Huh, we are finally here. Lin Xiaofan exhaled and wiped the sweat from his forehead. This body was too bad, and 10 kilometers was almost killing him. Seeing this, Liu Shishi, who was standing next to him, took out the handkerchief from her waist and gently wiped the sweat off Lin Xiaofan, and asked with a distressed look. Husband, do you want to take a break? Although he was very tired, looking at Liu Shishi who looked fine, Lin Xiaofan gritted his teeth and said with his self-esteem. It's okay, I'm not tired. After another cup of tea, the two of them walked to the gate of the town. The town is called Degao Town. Due to years of war, the outer periphery is surrounded by a 3 or 4 meter high city wall. At the gate of the city, 2 soldiers leaned lazily against the wall, watching the passers-by boredly. Stepping onto the official road of the town, there are more shops on both sides, and many people set up stalls in the open space. Pedestrians on the street come and go, and from time to time someone squats down to look at the things on the stalls. Shishi, have you come to the town often before? Lin Xiaofan saw that Liu Shishi didn't look around too much, and obviously came many times, so he asked. Liu Shishi smiled. Yang Yang and I are the oldest in the family. In the past, our parents often asked us to come to the town to buy some daily necessities. Looking at Liu Shishi's thin figure, Lin Xiaofan asked jokingly. You 2 little girls, you walked such a long way here, aren't you afraid of being taken away by wild animals? According to his memory, there are still many kinds of wild animals in this country, and many people have had accidents on their way to the town. But fortunately, Lijiazhuang is relatively close to the town. As long as you don't walk at night, there will be no problem. No, Yang Yang is very strong, and she has learned hunting from her father for a period of time. Ordinary wild animals can't deal with us. Liu Shishi said with some pride on her face. Liu Yang Yang is naturally strong. Her father once said that if Yang Yang was a man, she would definitely be a good hunter. Her father also taught her some hunting skills. Lin Xiaofan raised his sword eyebrows, thinking of the muscles on Liu Yanyan's thin arms. I thought she had it because she was doing farm work, but now I know that this little girl can hunt. At this moment, he suddenly remembered the scars on Liu Yanyan's arm, and he got angry. By the way, are your family members good to you? Lin Xiaofan asked. Liu Shishi looked tangled, and after thinking for a while, she said, My mother is very good to us. Normally, they won't let us go hungry. Speaking of which, I miss them a little bit. Lin Xiaofan frowned. If it was really good, what happened to the scar on Liu Yanyan's arm? Are you lying to me? I clearly saw that Liu Yangyang had a lot of scars on her body. Lin Xiaofan then spoke, wanting to get to the bottom of this matter. After hearing this, Liu Shishi paused and looked bitter. My mother gave birth to me, Yang Yang, and Cici, 3 daughters, but never gave birth to a son, so my father was beaten. Because of this, my aunt and my brother often beat and scolded the 3 of us. Lin Xiaofan saw that she was in a low mood and clenched his fists secretly. If he were to see his vicious brother-in-law, he would definitely pay the price. Liu Shisha took Lin Xiaofan to the largest grain store in the town, Baijie Grain Store, with ease. Baijie Grain Store is located in the city center and occupies a large area. The 4 big characters on the sign are also flying and dancing, with great style. At first glance, they are from the hands of a calligraphy master. At the door, several servants stood, waiting for the arrival of the guests. This Baijie Grain Store is said to have a big background and has government officials behind it. Liu Shisha explained casually. At this time, a man in gorgeous clothes walked towards it, and several servants who saw it ran over from a distance and greeted him with a smile. Sir, do you need anything? Sir, I am the most qualified here, can I take you around? The man looked at the people who were trying to please him, and then picked a clerk he liked to lead the way. The rest of the people sighed with regret and returned to the door. In order to make these clerks work actively, the store owner set a rule. They had to achieve a certain performance every month, otherwise their wages would be deducted. The main source of performance was selling fine grains. People like this who were dressed in gorgeous and generous clothes were obviously not short of money, and they must have bought fine grains. And if they were in a good mood, they might even give some money. If they met generous people, a little reward would be worth several months' salary. Lin Xiaofan and Liu Shisha were wearing tattered clothes, and no one came to greet them until they were about to reach the door. Chapter 16 No Credit. A clerk glanced at him, then pushed out the youngest clerk next to him. Xiaoyu, go and receive them, just as a training. Xiaoyu was only 12 or 13 years old, petite, with rosy cheeks and a bit of timidity in her eyes. Pushed out by the seniors, she hurriedly took 2 steps forward and said timidly, "Oh. Okay." Today was her first day at work. She thought she would learn more, but she didn't expect the seniors to be so kind to her and give her a chance to perform. In this case, she must not let people down. Thinking of this, she clenched her fists and smiled sweetly at Lin Xiaofan and the others. 2 guests, please come in. Facing the children in front of them, Lin Xiaofan and Liu Shisha smiled and nodded in response. As for the fact that the shop assistants did not come to greet them, Lin Xiaofan did not mind. In his previous life, he was a young man with no money, no family, no friends, no relatives. Xiaoyu nodded and said, "Okay, then we'll take you to see it." Faced with the guest's request, Xiaoyu naturally had to satisfy it. And since the guests were here, they must have bought food, and these were all their achievements. At this moment, several errand boys outside couldn't hold it back and laughed out loud. Har har, I'm dying of laughter, and they are still looking around. I don't know what this little girl was thinking, actually going to receive such a guest. Not only does it waste time, but it also doesn't earn performance. Har har, I just pushed her casually, but I didn't expect her to really go. Although several people deliberately lowered their voices, they still reached Lin Xiaofan's ears. In response, Lin Xiaofan shook his head gently, without too much explanation. I wonder what their expressions will be when they buy high-quality food later? Several people quickly came to the low-quality food area. The low-quality food is mainly coarse grains, and there are many unshelled wheat grains. Lin Xiaofan looked at it and shook his head. Wouldn't it hurt his throat if he ate this kind of food? And it is hard to swallow. However, for people from poor families, this kind of grain is more filling than fine grain. Xiaoyu didn't have much to say about the inferior grain. After a quick look, they went to the medium grain area. The proportion of coarse grains is still high, but there are also few impurities. If it is made into rice, the taste will definitely be better than the grain in the inferior grain area. However, Lin Xiaofan, who was spoiled by Mr. Yuan, would definitely not accept it. So, they went to the superior grain area again. This is the superior grain area of our granary. The grain here is all fine grain, and the price is 600 yuan per stone. Xiaoyu explained patiently. Lin Xiaofan picked up some grain with his hands and nodded. The superior grain is to be supplied to some big names in the city, so the merchants make it very carefully. The appearance is very clean and the quality is also top-notch. Shisha, what do you think of this grain? Lin Xiaofan asked. A servant at the door couldn't help laughing when he heard this. No way, this guy is really trying to show off. He wants to buy high-quality grain in this tattered outfit. I guess he can't even get 600 coins with all the silver on his body. Maybe Xiaoyu didn't tell him that high-quality grain is not sold by pound. He should buy at least 1 stone of grain. I've seen a lot of people like this. He will definitely say that he thinks the grain is average, and then turn around and buy low-quality grain from a street stall. Seeing Lin Xiaofan being ridiculed, Liu Shisha was immediately unhappy. She turned around and glared at the servants who were talking. But she was going to buy low-quality grain anyway, so there was no reason to go over and argue. Liu Shisha's appearance was not bad to begin with. At this time, her little face turned red with anger, and her face was pink and rosy, which was unique. The servants looked at Liu Shisha with wanton eyes, and one of them sneered. What a fool! He actually brought a slow-moving product with him when he went out. Did he bring it home yesterday? TSK, he is really ignorant. He dared to bring a slow-moving product home. But don't tell me, this young lady's figure is really... Hearing everyone talking so wanton, Lin Xiaofan's eyes turned cold. He stepped forward calmly and stood in front of Liu Shisha, blocking their wanton sight. Liu Shisha pulled Lin Xiaofan's hand, suppressed the anger in her heart, and whispered. My husband, although this grain is very good, it is too. Since my wife thinks this grain is good, let's buy this. We want 6 stones. Okay, you want 6 stones, right? Then I'll find someone to give it to you. Xiaoyu continued to talk, and suddenly found something wrong halfway through. Are you sure, sir? You want 6 stones of high-quality grain? We can't sell on credit in our store. Looking at the 2 people in front of him again, although they were dressed in shabby clothes, they were both handsome. But the man's face was a little pale, probably because he was so thin because of some disease. Seeing Xiaoyu's incredible look, Lin Xiaofan smiled and said, It's just a few stones of grain, there's no need to buy on credit. As he said that, Lin Xiaofan took out 4 taels of silver. Liu Shisha next to him wanted to say something, but was grabbed by Lin Xiaofan. A warm big hand held her little hand, and the 5 fingers intertwined. In an instant, Liu Shisha's mind went blank. Although the 2 were already husband and wife, they had only known each other for 1 day. Moreover, she had never held hands with anyone in public. Liu Shisha was so embarrassed that her pretty face was like a rosy cloud, and her heart was thumping and almost jumped out of her chest. Xiaoyu stretched out her hand to take the silver, and she still felt a little unreal in her heart. She sold 6 stones of high-quality grain the next day at work. Happiness came too suddenly. Just when her hand was about to touch the silver, Lin Xiaofan suddenly withdrew his hand with a faint expression. Xiaoyu was puzzled and looked anxious. This was a big order. Sir, you... Let them apologize to me. Otherwise, I'll go buy it from another store. Lin Xiaofan played with the silver ingot in his hand and chuckled. Wife, how about we go to another store to buy it? Liu Shisha's cheeks flushed. She knew that Lin Xiaofan was venting her anger for her. Yeah. Her voice was so low that it was almost inaudible, but Lin Xiaofan smiled, took her hand, and was about to leave. Xiaoyu was immediately anxious when she heard this. She hurriedly stopped Lin Xiaofan. Sir, they just... Xiaoyu didn't know how to defend those people. If the shopkeeper knew that the guests came to the door and gossiped about others in front of them, then... Hurry up and apologize to this guest, otherwise, let the shopkeeper know. Xiaoyu's face turned pale when she thought of the shopkeeper's method. The few people who were gossiping just now regretted it a long time ago. They were also worried that their superiors would get angry, so although they were unwilling, they could only swallow their anger and come to apologize. Lin Xiaofan then handed over the silver, and Xiaoyu hurriedly took it. Okay, 2 adults, wait a moment, I'll pack it for you. After that, she hurriedly looked for bags to pack the grain. At this time, several servants were even more dumbfounded. Where did this poor boy in tattered clothes get so much silver? He actually wanted it. Was he kidding just now? 6 stones of high-quality grain, that's a lot of sales. For them, they may not be able to sell so much in 10 days. The powerful customers are occupied by the old guys of the store, and they have to talk for a long time to sell some sales. At this time, they felt a little regretful, and their faces were also burning. After all, just now, they had mocked. Chapter 17 The Arrogant Brother-in-Law. And people like this who spend several taels of silver at a time are likely to be some wealthy family. If you offend them, your life will be difficult. As for the clothes of the two people, maybe they are wearing them on purpose. They have been doing odd jobs here for several years. Although they are a little snobbish, they are not slow to react. Well, sir, I will help you pack. A smart odd job came over with a smile and said, as humble as possible. Lin Xiaofan glanced at him and said nothing more. Just now, he made the most ruthless mocking remarks. But now, he bowed his head and greeted him. With such a fast change of face, it would be a pity if he didn't become a Sichuan opera actor. Sir, I will help you pack too. Several people came out with apologetic smiles on their faces. They were all the people who had just mocked. Several people have worked here for several years, and their hands and feet are much more dexterous than Xiaoyu. In more than 10 minutes, 6 stones of grain had been packed. Leave the grain here for a while, I'll come to take it later. Lin Xiaofan left with Liu Shisha. 6 stone of grain, a full 720 kilograms, he and Liu Shisha would definitely not be able to carry it back alone, so they would rent a bullock cart to take it back when they left. Sir, you don't need to. We are having an event in our store now. If you buy 5 stone of high quality grain, we can personally deliver it to you. Just leave your name and address, and I will deliver it to you as soon as possible. Xiaoyu smiled brightly. She didn't expect that she would make a big deal today. Lin Xiaofan's eyes lit up when he heard this. That's perfect. By the way, what's your name? I'll look for you when I buy grain in the future. Xiaoyu was delighted when she heard this, and hurriedly told the shopkeeper. When she came out, she was holding a cloth bag in her hand, and her smile became even brighter. Sir, just call me Xiaoyu. My shopkeeper just said that this little grain is for you. Don't think it's too little. Lin Xiaofan glanced at it and estimated that it was only about 20 kilograms. It was just a gift, but it was considered thoughtful. He smiled and agreed. Husband, you are too impulsive. We have spent nearly 4 taels of silver. Our life will be difficult in the future. After coming out, Liu Shisha pouted and said. Now she calmed down, but she was more worried. 6 stones of high-quality grain, if it was replaced with low-quality grain, could buy 2 more stones, enough for their family to eat for a long time. They only have 7 taels of silver now, and most of it has been spent just on buying food for the winter. Lin Xiaofan looked at Liu Shisha's pretty face, couldn't help pinching it, and smiled gently. Didn't I say it? I will find a way to make money. We have a stone mine at home, so why worry about not having money? Liu Shisha blushed with shame when her husband pinched her face in public, and whispered back, but we haven't confirmed that it is a limestone mine, and even if it is confirmed, it will take a lot of time to mine and calcine. Also, I don't know where to sell it. Limestone is good, but the price is only about the same as high-quality grain. The key is how to sell it, she doesn't know. Don't worry, leave the money to me, your man, you don't have to worry. Lin Xiaofan said confidently. He also touched Liu Shisha's hair, lowered his head, and whispered in her ear, just eat and drink well, serve me well, and then give me a few cubs. I came here from the 21st century, isn't it easy to make a little money? A head-patting killer made Liu Shisha's face redder, and what Lin Xiaofan said just now, she felt her whole body tremble, her legs softened, and she almost couldn't stand. Suddenly, a big hand embraced her small waist. Lin Xiaofan looked at the shy eldest daughter-in-law in front of him, and his heart was moved. This little girl is really tempting. When will his bridal chamber come? Just when the two were sweet, a harsh voice interrupted them. Hey, who was that? It turns out to be you, the unsellable commodity. Lin Xiaofan frowned and turned around to see a teenager. Liu Shisha seemed a little scared when she saw this person, and she couldn't help but lean towards Lin Xiaofan. Seeing this, the boy snorted coldly. What? It's only been a few days since I beat you, and you don't recognize me. You don't even say hello when we meet. It seems that the food Dad fed you before was in vain. Lin Xiaofan looked at Liu Shisha beside him with some doubts. This is my younger brother Liu Ergu. Liu Shisha explained in a low voice. Lin Xiaofan looked at the boy in front of him again, and found that this person and Liu Shisha did have some similarities between their eyebrows. My father loves you so much and feeds you every meal. If you were a slow-selling commodity like you would rather starve to death. Lin Xiaofan seemed not to hear Liu Ergu's barking, and turned to ask Liu Shisha. Has he always been so rude? Liu Shisha hesitated for a moment and said briefly. He has always been mean to us sisters, but it's okay, it's all in the past, let's go quickly. The past is in the past. Liu Shisha didn't want to cause trouble for Lin Xiaofan because of herself, so she pulled Lin Xiaofan to leave. However, she pulled twice, but Lin Xiaofan didn't move, but hugged her back. R. The sudden warmth made Liu Shisha blush. This husband is really. Why doesn't he always play by the rules? His brother is still next to him, and there are so many people on the street. When Liu Ergu saw this scene, his face turned pale. He talked for so long, and you are just showing off your love, right? Liu Ergu looked at Lin Xiaofan's shabby clothes and kept on taunting. I said who would like you, I think you two are really a good match. One has no money and the other can't have children. I'm curious whether you will starve to death or be beaten to death. Liu Ergu, you're going too far. Hearing her man being mocked, Liu Shisha was immediately annoyed and took a step forward. It doesn't matter how her brother scolds her, but he can't scold her man. Har har, you still have a temper after getting married, right? Now you turn around and talk about the people at home, you are really an ungrateful person. Liu Ergu was furious when he saw Liu Shisha dare to refute him, and his words became more and more unpleasant. And your mother is the same. She can't give birth to a son every year, causing your father to be beaten every year. If it were me, you should have thrown you all into the mountains earlier, so that not only would there be fewer mouths to feed, but your father wouldn't be beaten. Liu Shisha was so angry that she trembled all over, but she didn't dare to say anything. First, men are superior to women in this era, and second, she has been beaten and scolded by Liu Ergu since she was a child, so she has no courage to resist. Liu Ergu became more and more excited when he scolded her because he saw that she did not dare to resist. And your sister Liu Sisi is the same, she only eats and does not work. I usually cook and do some housework. Do you see the medium grain in my hand? You will never get to eat it in your life. After saying that, Liu Ergu picked up half a bag of medium grain in his hand and shook it in front of them. Lin Xiaofan listened to the harsh words, and his eyes became colder and colder. But soon, he controlled his emotions. Guzi, is this how you treat your sister? Liu Ergu looked Lin Xiaofan up and down, and saw that he was thin and should not be his opponent, so he spoke boldly. Har har, so what? Why, do you still want to stand up for him? But soon, he reacted and his face turned pale again. No, when did I have the name Guzi? Wait a minute, what did you call me? Say it again. Chapter 18, Touching Porcelain. He was the only son in the family, and his parents had left all the good things to him since he was a child. He was usually arrogant, and now he was called a dog. How could he bear it? As he spoke, Liu Ergu took a step forward. His tall stature and years of hunting gave him an oppressive feel. Lin Xiaofan glanced around and saw the law enforcement team not far away, and they seemed to be coming over. Bang! Lin Xiaofan suddenly jumped up and punched Liu Ergu in the stomach with all his strength, knocking him back 2 steps. Liu Ergu felt severe abdominal pain and covered his stomach with both hands. His face turned pale. Although Lin Xiaofan was a little weak, his punch at close range was quite powerful. In addition, Liu Ergu didn't expect Lin Xiaofan to dare to attack him, so he was completely unprepared and was hit hard. At this moment, he was completely stunned. How could this frail, ragged, weak brother-in-law in front of him dare to attack him in the street? With anger rising up in his body, Liu Ergu, who had never suffered any loss since childhood, clenched his fists and his eyes were blazing with fire. He swung his fist like a hammer, just as he was about to knock Lin Xiaofan to the ground, when he suddenly saw the law enforcement team rushing over. Liu Ergu quickly retracted his fist and threatened viciously. Just wait. How dare you hit a man in the street? You're done. Beating someone in front of the law enforcement team is a provocation to the dignity of the law enforcement team. If such a person is sent to the government office, he will be severely punished if he does not die. Lin Xiaofan sneered, har har, it's still unclear who will be finished. As they were talking, the law enforcement team was approaching. R. A scream was heard, and Lin Xiaofan took 2 steps back suddenly, squatting directly on the ground, holding his stomach with both hands and a ferocious expression. What's going on? Did you know that fighting is not allowed in this town? Sir, this guy was really looking for trouble. I just said a few words to him, and he punched me directly. Lin Xiaofan pointed at Liu Ergu, his voice trembling and breathless, as if he was about to die from the beating. What? Liu Ergu was a little confused. It seemed like I was the one who was beaten just now. When did I start beating people? The captain of the law enforcement team looked at Lin Xiaofan, who was squatting on the ground with a painful look on his face, and then looked at Liu Ergu, who was tall and a little confused, and he immediately understood everything. Liu Ergu must have relied on his strong body to beat people in the street. This is a provocation to their law enforcement team. You, come with me to the government office. The captain of the law enforcement team spoke righteously, and several of his men immediately surrounded Liu Ergu. Liu Ergu then came to his senses and realized that the other party was trying to throw dirty water on him. The main reason is that people's minds are not that complicated in this era, and no one is free to do anything to scam people, so he had never seen such tricks before and didn't he know how to refute for a while. Sir, it's unfair. He was the one who hit me. Liu Ergu pointed at Lin Xiaofan and defended himself aggrievedly. Thinking of Lin Xiaofan's powerful punch just now, Liu Ergu still feels a dull pain in his abdomen. But when he looked at Lin Xiaofan, he was stunned. At this time, Lin Xiaofan had fallen to the ground with a pale face, covering his stomach with his hands and gasping for breath. When he heard Liu Ergu pointing the finger at him, he struggled to get up, but after trying several times, he still fell to the ground, holding his stomach. He smiled weakly, his body still shaking uncontrollably. Sir, how dare I hit him? His fists are very hard and it hurts. I really didn't hit him. I hope you can do justice. Seeing this, the captain of the law enforcement team no longer hesitated and waved his hand to take Liu Ergu away. Sir, it's unfair, he really hit me. Liu Ergu was so wronged. It would be fine if he hit this weakling, but the key point was that he clenched his fist but didn't hit me yet. When the law enforcement officer saw that he was still not obedient, he kicked Liu Ergu hard several times, muttering, Be quiet. Do you really think I'm a fool? With his weak body, he wouldn't dare to fight you even if he had 10 times the courage. After kicking him a few times, he still wasn't satisfied. Another one hit Liu Ergu's head hard and cursed. I've seen a lot of people like you. Do you think it's fun to bully others? I'll have some fun with you when we get to the government office. Liu Ergu wanted to explain, but the two of them didn't want to listen. Helplessly, he could only turn his head and look fiercely at Liu Shisha and the others, shouting, Liu Shisha, you two just wait, from now on, I will never reconcile with you. In response, the Yarman runners punched and kicked him until he stopped screaming, and then half dragged and half pulled him away. After the few people walked away, Lin Xiaofan brushed the dirt off his body and stood up as if nothing had happened. This time I am teaching him a lesson. If he dares to do this again next time, I won't let him off so easily. Liu Shisha stepped forward to help clean up the dust, and said with a sly smile, I can't believe you're such a good actor, husband. Liu Ergu had abused them before at home, so she was very happy to be able to play tricks on Liu Ergu today. That's right. Your husband, I'm an all-rounder. Come on, let's go buy some clothes, or we'll always be looked down upon. It was already noon and more people were coming into the town. Most of them came from nearby villages, either to buy daily necessities or to sell things. In order to promote economic development, the Dacian kingdom allowed street vendors to be set up in some parts of the city. In these areas, the sounds of hawking were endless, and it was quite lively. Selling carrots, the best carrots. Selling grain, 370 coins per stone. Selling candid whores, the best candid whores. The two of them walked into a clothing store, chatting and laughing. The shop was not busy today. When the two came in, the charming lady boss in her 40s came to greet them. You two, please take a look first to see if there is any fabric you like. Lin Xiaofan scanned the various fabrics in the store. Dacian kingdom did not have many restrictions on clothing, and civilians could wear clothes of various colors. However, due to the lack of dyeing technology, the colors were not very good. After taking a quick look, Lin Xiaofan finally chose two types. One was bright red, for making clothes for his wives, and the other was black, for himself. Shisha, do you think bright red suits you? Lin Xiaofan asked for opinions. Liu Shisha bit off a candid horse and said, Husband, although bright red looks better, it is not resistant to stains. Black is better and does not need to be washed. Lin Xiaofan thought about it and felt that it made sense. In ancient times, there were no washing machines, and it was indeed inconvenient to wash clothes in winter. It would be better to buy a black one. Okay, then let's buy black ones, 2 for each person. After hearing this, Liu Shisha quickly swallowed the candid whores in her mouth and said, "No need, we can just make 1 for each of us, and you can make 2 for us to wear in turn." Lin Xiaofan frowned, 1 for each person, how do we change clothes? Chapter 19 My husband is mighty. Changing clothes? You don't need to change clothes in winter, it's really troublesome. You know, every time you wash your cotton padded clothes in winter, the effect of keeping out the cold will become worse. And there are many inconveniences in washing clothes in winter, so ancient people rarely changed and washed their cotton padded clothes. Anyway, just buy 1. Oh, we all know how to make clothes, so just buy the cloth and make it yourself. Lin Xiaofan knew that he couldn't win over Liu Shisha, so he just did what she said. But it doesn't matter. In a few days, I will be able to earn my first pot of gold by selling lime. By then, several people will definitely be willing to buy more. The 2 of them went to buy 2 pounds of meat, and then walked around the town, asking about the price of limestone. The price of 1 stone of lime is about the same as that of 1 stone of high-quality grain, which is about 650 coins. Lin Xiaofan said that he could accept this. After all, lime is used to build houses, so it can't be too expensive. At this moment, a figure appeared in his sight. For some unknown reason, this man's left leg was injured, and blood was flowing down, leaving a trail of blood on the ground. Everyone watched him enter the pharmacy, and an old man next to him shook his head. Oh, what a pity. Such a young guy is missing a leg. Lin Xiaofan was a little confused after hearing this. Isn't it just a leg injury? Stop the bleeding, bandage it, and it will recover in no time, right? The medical science in this world can't be so bad. There is not even a medicine to stop bleeding. If this is true, then it is a business opportunity. Old man, he's just injured. Can't you just stop the bleeding? Lin Xiaofan asked with a puzzled look on his face. You, young man, have never been to a pharmacy. With continuous fighting, all the bleeding-stopping drugs have been sent to the front lines. How can you find them in ordinary pharmacies? When Lin Xiaofan heard this, his eyes suddenly lit up. In his previous life, he was born in the countryside and learned a lot of rural folk remedies. One of them was to use lime and a kind of grass to make a hemostatic medicine. If Dacian Kingdom was really in urgent need of hemostatic medicine, wouldn't he be able to make a fortune? I just don't know if there is that kind of grass in this world. Thinking of this, Lin Xiaofan no longer felt like shopping and took Liu Shisha home. On their way home, Lin Xiaofan walked around a few more times and finally found the grass he needed on a hill. Shisha, have you ever seen this kind of grass? Lin Xiaofan wanted to know if there was a lot of this kind of grass, so he asked. Liu Shisha looked at him for a long time before speaking. Husband, this is for item grass. It cannot be eaten and has no special effects. Lin Xiaofan was delighted to see that Liu Shisha recognized him, and hurriedly asked. Then do you know where there are large areas of this grass? Liu Shisha thought for a while, then shook her head. Husband, this grass is everywhere, but it doesn't grow in large patches. If you want to pick it, you can still find a lot of it. Why do you want this grass, husband? Lin Xiaofan's eyes were still full of excitement as he replied, make a hemostatic medicine. You know, hemostatic drugs can sometimes save lives. As long as they are made, they will be snapped up even if they are sold at a high price. As long as there are more grasses, it will be fine. At most, it will take more time to collect them. Husband, are you sure? This grass can be used to make hemostatic medicine. When Liu Shisha heard the news, her eyes suddenly lit up. She knew how valuable the hemostatic drug was. If she could make this, she would definitely make a fortune. But she felt that it was unlikely, because for segment grass is everywhere, and it has been so many years, but no one has said that it can be used as a hemostatic medicine. Although this grass looks green and lush, it has thorns and doesn't taste very good. It is said that even cows don't eat it. And her husband is so capable. He knows that there are stones that can be made into lime in the deserted mountains where no one wants them, and any kind of grass in the ground can be made into hemostatic medicine. My husband is mighty. When Liu Shisha looked at Lin Xiaofan, there was unconsciously more admiration in her eyes. Looking at his wife's starry eyes, Lin Xiaofan straightened his body unconsciously. This is probably 80% possible. Let's pick some and try it out. The two were delayed along their way, and it was not until the sun was about to set that they finally arrived at the village gate. Xiaofan is back. The village head leader was just getting some fresh air at the entrance of the village. When he saw Lin Xiaofan coming back, he looked up and greeted him. Yes, I went into town this morning. Lin Xiaofan also smiled and greeted leader. After all, leader had treated him well since he was a child. Leader glanced at the bags the two men were carrying, which probably contained only about 20 to 30 kilograms of food, and said earnestly, Xiaofan, a round trip to the city takes a lot of time and energy, so buy more next time. It's more cost effective. After all, you have some money now. How about this, next time you go to the city, I will lend you my ox cart, and you can bring back 300 to 400 kilograms of food for the winter. Lin Xiaofan smiled and responded, then left with Liu Shisha. But before they had taken a few steps, they ran into two familiar faces, Li Ermezi and Li Daniu. Hey, isn't this Xiaofan? Is he going into the city to buy food? Li Daniu hurried over, just like an elder who cared about Lin Xiaofan very much. Glancing at the pitifully small bag of food in Lin Xiaofan's hand, Li Daniu said with a sigh. Xiaofan, why did you only buy so little? Don't you have the money to afford it? Have you already started preparing 8 taels of silver for me? Hey, you don't have to be so anxious. We are from the same village. You can pay the money back slowly. There is no rush. If it really doesn't work, you can. His eyes vaguely looked at Liu Shisha beside Lin Xiaofan. TSK, this woman has a great figure, better than the girls in the brothel. It's all Lin Xiaofan's fault, otherwise, he could go to the brothel to find her and play with her. Faced with Li Daniu's sarcastic words, Lin Xiaofan glanced at him and did not answer. Li Ermezi also stepped forward and said, Xiaofan, did you buy it at a big grain store? The grain there is indeed more expensive. But let me tell you, no matter how hard life is, you can't go hungry. I know some stalls selling very cheap food, you can go shopping there. If you really can't make it, I'll take you with me next time I go to the city and I'll find you some cheap food. Lin Xiaofan smiled at Li Ermezi. Uncle, no need to bother you. Most of the grain sold on the street stalls cost more than 370 coins. If it was lower, it was low-quality grain. After all, qualified grain can be sold directly to grain merchants for 370 yuan. Who would have the time to set up a street stall? Lin Xiaofan was in a hurry to go home and check on the lime, so he ignored the two of them. This Lin Xiaofan is really too much. We are his elders after all, but he seems to be so indifferent. Li Daniu's face was grim. He had just said several sarcastic words, but Lin Xiaofan just ignored him. Li Ermezi's face wasn't looking good either. He felt that Lin Xiaofan didn't know how to live. He had always taken care of this kid, but this guy was too ungrateful. Chapter 20, Begging for a Beating? Returning to the familiar yet simple courtyard, Lin Xiaofan discovered that his home had changed. The kitchen was repaired, and the 4 wooden piles were reinforced, so at least they wouldn't blow in the wind and fall down at any time. In front of their house, there was a pile of limestone, which should have been dug by the 4 girls this morning. It's good to have many daughters-in-law. You don't have to tell them anything, they will do their work well. Lin Xiaofan nodded with satisfaction. Liu Shisha hurried to the kitchen and saw that there was still warm water in the pot. She quickly scooped a bowl of water and trotted to the courtyard. She came to Lin Xiaofan and smiled gently, My husband, you are tired. Drink some water first to relax. Lin Xiaofan wanted to reach out and take the bowl, but Liu Shisha was not happy. Husband, drink it quickly. Facing the beautiful woman's hopeful eyes, Lin Xiaofan opened his mouth and Liu Shisha carefully fed him until he finished the bowl of water. Are you still thirsty, husband? Lin Xiaofan shook his head, and Liu Shisha hurried to the kitchen again, and soon came back with a basin. It looked like she was going to soak his feet again. Lin Xiaofan found a stool and sat down. Liu Shisha hurriedly took off his shoes and gently put his feet into the basin of hot water. Lin Xiaofan took a breath and said, You know what, his feet really hurt a bit after going to town. My dear, from now on, if you want to go to town for such hard work, just let me do it. Seeing that Lin Xiaofan had 2 blisters on the soles of his feet, Liu Shisha looked distressed. Her husband is in delicate health, how can he walk so far? I'm not tired at all. Lin Xiaofan felt a little speechless. They went to the town together and walked the same distance. But when Liu Shisha came back, she fed him water and washed his feet. He felt a little embarrassed. It's all my fault. Don't worry, my husband. Once the family is settled, I will take my sisters out to find work. I will definitely let you live a good life. Lin Xiaofan was speechless. He had said that he was going to make money, but this little girl just didn't believe it. Lin Xiaofan and the others went to the town, and the other women continued to dig stones today. They have carried the child back home several times, and when they came back this time, they could still see the man talking on the street. Seen for women carrying a large basket full of stones, Li Daniu curled his lips in disdain. You really think this is a treasure? You carried so much back home. Maybe this is the treasure. Lin Xiaofan had just embarrassed Li Ermazi, and he was very angry. Use this stuff to build a courtyard wall. This thing is not strong at all. Li Daniu continued, his eyes fell on the women, and he swallowed secretly. If these women were not too thin and unable to bear children, he would also like to take them back. Xiaofan is too unkind to women. He actually let you do this kind of work. As Li Daniu was about to step forward, several women's faces turned cold. They hated the look in this man's eyes. Young lady, why don't you just follow me? I, Li Daniu, won't say anything else, but I'll make sure you have enough food to eat. This kind of woman brought back halfway is different from the one brought back from the county government office. This kind has no fertility quota. She can be thrown away at any time, and no one will care. Hearing this, the faces of several women changed, especially Liu Yangyang. She clenched her fists and looked at Li Daniu with an extremely ferocious look. What did you say? Liu Yangyang raised her fist and wanted to hit Li Daniu. Li Xiaoran hurriedly grabbed her arm and warned her in a low voice, don't be impulsive. It's not okay to hit a man. If you report it to the authorities, you'll be killed. Liu Yangyang also knew this, but she was still angry. Oh, the little lady is angry now, come and hit me right here. Seeing that the women didn't dare to take action, Li Daniu became even more arrogant. He simply approached the two women, tilted his head, revealing half of his old face, pointed at his face arrogantly, and started shouting. Liu Yangyang gritted her teeth, and could hardly control the anger in her body. If Li Xiaoran hadn't held her down tightly, she would have punched him. There was a loud slap, which startled everyone. This is the first time I know someone wants to be beaten. Then I can only satisfy you. At this time, everyone saw that Lin Xiaofan had walked over at some point. He shook his hand and said with a look of disgust, this guy is really shameless, it hit my hand a little painful. After shaking it a few times, Lin Xiaofan put his hand close to Liu Yangyang and laughed, wife, this guy is too shameless, my hand hurts, blow it for me. Liu Yangyang was stunned at first, then her eyes lit up. She pouted her lips, grabbed Lin Xiaofan's hand with one hand, and started blowing it seriously. Li Daniu was stunned for a moment, his face still burning with pain. Lin Xiaofan, this brat, was getting bolder and bolder. He actually dared to hit him in front of so many people. Lin Xiaofan, you dare to hit me. Hearing this, Lin Xiaofan chuckled, didn't you strongly request to be beaten? I was just kind enough to meet your request. You? Li Daniu, be respectful to my wife next time. If you dare to do that again, I won't mind chopping you off. Thinking of the way Lin Xiaofan held the kitchen knife yesterday, Li Daniu felt really unsure. If this kid doesn't care about his life, I really can't beat him. But if he dares to do something to me, I'll just have to wait and see. You wait. Li Daniu said viciously. After saying this, he ran quickly. Judging from the direction he was running, he should be heading to the village head's house. Hey, Xiaofan, is there anything you can't talk about calmly? You're offending him like this. Li Ermazi sighed. Lin Xiaofan used to be too timid, which was not good. But now this guy is too bold. He beats people up if he disagrees with them. This is not a good habit. Uncle, don't worry, I'm fine. The girls were tired from carrying such heavy stones, and Lin Xiaofan felt a little distressed seeing them. Husband, Sister Shisha, why did you come back just now? I thought you two went out to play without telling us and would not come back. Liu Yangyang put down the basket and pouted in dissatisfaction. Oh, she also wants to go out with her husband alone. I picked some grass on the way, which took some time. Lin Xiaofan took out 4 kinds of grass from the cloth bag. This is 4-point grass? Husband, Sister Shisha, why are you picking this? Sheep won't eat it. Li Xiaoran asked with some confusion. You don't know this. These four herbs can be made into hemostatic drugs. Liu Shisha said boastfully. What? Hemostatic medicine? After hearing this, everyone looked in disbelief, just like Liu Shisha when she first heard it. Seeing this, Liu Shisha nodded with satisfaction. Impossible. This thing, even animals wouldn't eat it. How could it possibly stop bleeding? If it really could stop bleeding, we wouldn't have known about it. Chapter 21 made her cry. Li Xiaoran shook her head like a rattle. What a joke! How could grass that even cows wouldn't eat be compared with expensive hemostatic drugs? Seeing her like this, Liu Shisha thought of herself having similar thoughts when she first found out. My husband said yes, I believe this must be the hemostatic medicine. Lin Xiaofan was overjoyed when he saw Liu Shisha's complete trust in him, and said to the little girl. From now on, you will be the boss and the eldest wife in the family, the type who will not accept any rebuttal. By the way, what about the hemostatic medicine? Is it precious? Li Xiaoqian asked at an inappropriate time. Isn't it just some hemostatic medicine? Logically speaking, it should be available in every dynasty. Even if it is sold, it won't make much money. She remembered that in modern times, hemostatic drugs were available on PDD and could be bought for 9.9 yuan, with no shipping fee. Xiaoqian, you are confused. Li Xiaoran looked at her second sister with a look of disappointment. Why didn't she realize before that her sister was so stupid that she didn't even know this most basic common sense? Li Xiaoqian was stunned on the spot. Now that the country has been at war for years, all their hemostatic medicine has been sent to the front. If ordinary people are injured, they can only simply sprinkle some firewood ash on it and bandage it. Do you think this hemostatic medicine is precious? Li Xiaoran explained. After hearing this, Li Xiaoqian suddenly realized that things are valuable because they are rare, let alone medicine for curing diseases. If I can really do it, I will definitely make a lot of money. Then I won't have to eat these coarse grains that I can't swallow and wear these coarse linen clothes. Thinking of this, Li Xiaoqian's face showed a little more hope. However, can Lin Xiaofan, a person with no knowledge of anything in his past and present life, really make a hemostatic medicine? Okay, let's talk about the hemostatic medicine later. Let's eat first. Lin Xiaofan interrupted the group and walked for most of the day. He was now starving. Yes, Cici, you can use these fine grains and this meat to make it. Liu Shisha opened 2 cloth bags, which contained fine grains and meat. Seeing this, the girls couldn't help but swallow their saliva. How long had it been since they had eaten fine grains? As for meat, it was not something that ordinary people could eat. But, these 2 things are very expensive, and we only have so little money at home. Didn't we agree to buy coarse grains? It seems that Lin Xiaofan doesn't know how to live. He still has some money now, but he spends it lavishly. There are so many people in his family, what will they eat in the future? Thinking of this, the women all looked worried. Cici, make more, don't save it. Lin Xiaofan was afraid that they would be reluctant to eat it, so he gave them another reminder. Good. Liu Cici agreed and went into the kitchen. Fine grains are naturally fragrant, and Liu Cici is a good cook, so the rich aroma of rice spreads through the simple little courtyard and spreads far away. There is also the rare aroma of meat, which makes passers-by stop and take a look. Today's meal is particularly sumptuous. The white rice is fragrant and topped with broth, which whets one's appetite. Lin Xiaofan couldn't help swallowing his saliva just by looking at it. This looked like a delicious meal. Whole grains are really unpalatable, at least I have to eat this kind in the future. He now has a house, a car and a wife, shouldn't he enjoy himself? Although this house is simple and leaky, you can't say it doesn't have any problems. If you ask where the car is, Lin Xiaofan will go to the backyard and show you the one-wheeled wooden cart. Liu Shisha and her 2 sisters looked at the food in front of them and smelled the rich meat aroma, their eyes reddened. When they were at home, their parents were pretty nice to them. Their father could hunt, but he had to exchange the catch for money to buy food. Occasionally I have to make it myself, and always eat it with my son. Most of the time, the 3 of them can only smell their taste. After being driven out, she had never eaten such delicious food before. She only ate some coarse grains every day, and she was thankful if she could get half full and not starve to death. Li Xiaoran was eating when she suddenly burst into tears. Xiaoran, why are you crying? Liu Shisha saw that Li Xiaoran was not in a good state and asked hurriedly. Li Xiaofan wiped away her tears and said with a sob. Nothing, it's just. I've never had such a good meal. She had 3 older brothers. In those days, it was good enough for the family to have enough food. There was very little meat to eat. Even if there was meat, it was given to her brothers. Later, her father and brothers went to the front line and never came back. Her mother also died of illness in the bitterly cold winter. Only the 2 sisters were left to depend on each other. So this was the first time she had eaten meat since she was a child. Liu Shisha was also very excited after hearing this. Lin Xiaofan sighed on the side. It is really unfortunate to be born in this era. Men went out to fight and suffered heavy casualties. Women were treated as objects and had a low status. For the first time, Lin Xiaofan had the urge to save the world. But soon, he shook his head. I don't have any golden fingers, how can I save the world? As long as I can take good care of the people around me and make life at home better and better, that's enough. It's okay, everything will pass. My husband is so good to us, our lives will definitely get better and better. Liu Shisha comforted her. But after hearing this, Li Xiaofan cried even louder. My husband is a good person, but he doesn't know how to live. I'm not sure if the little money I have can last me through the winter. As for the lime and medicine her husband mentioned, Li Xiaofan didn't even dare to think about it. How could these things be so easy to make? She didn't refute because she didn't want to undermine her husband's self-confidence. The sun had already set, its last rays casting a shadow on the earth. The villagers who had gone up to the mountains to work returned in groups of 3 or 5, gossiping about the village. Li Jin was lying on the recliner with a smile on his face. This year the weather has been good and the harvest is good, so no villagers should starve to death or freeze to death. As the head of the village, he had watched all the villagers grow up, so he naturally couldn't bear to see them starve to death. It was Lin Xiaofan, that kid, who was really a worry to him. He chose a piece of land where no grass grew, and he didn't know how long it would last. At this moment, his eyes swept across the official road and saw a donkey cart coming towards the village entrance. Donkey cart. There are only a few families in the village who have ox carts, and no donkey carts. Could it be that they are here to deliver something? But the village chief was puzzled. The villagers had a bumper harvest and did not need to buy a lot of food. Building a house was even more impossible. If the villagers built a house, they would use stones and thatch, using local materials. There was no need to go to the city to buy materials. When the donkey cart reached the entrance of the village head stepped forward and asked, "Little brother, what are you doing here?" The driver glanced at the old man in front of him and said, "Send food." Delivering food. When buying food, we usually carry it back by ourselves, so why would we still have food delivered? Could it be that Lin Xiaofan bought it? If it was him, why would he buy so much? And it would be fine to use a bullock cart. Although it is slower, it is cheaper. Could this kid be fooled? Chapter 22. There is no way it will succeed. Seeing that the village chief couldn't figure it out, the talkative driver started to explain. We are the grain transport team of Baijia Grain Shop. As long as you buy more than 5 stone of high-quality grain from our grain shop, we will deliver it to your door for free. Today, a young man of 15 or 16 years old from your village, I think his name is Lin Fan, brought a beautiful girl to buy grain. The village head thought, a 15 or 16-year-old boy and a pretty girl, isn't that Lin Xiaofan? This kid bought more than 5 stone of high-quality grain as soon as he had money? How could he be so wasteful? Thinking of this, the village chief couldn't help but get angry. Any family in the village was better off than Lin Xiaofan, and this kid had so little money in his hand that he didn't even know how to save it. Who doesn't like to eat high-quality food? But what happens after you eat it? Are you and your wives going to starve? By the way, where does that guy live and who is he? I've never heard of such a person in your village before. The driver asked again. It wasn't that he was being nosy, but before he came, the owner of their grain store had told him to find out the background of the person buying the grain when he had the chance. His name is Lin Xiaofan, he is a villager in our village. As for where he lives, just walk straight along the entrance of the village, and the house at the end is it. Seeing that the head of the village really didn't know, the driver shook his head and continued to move forward. Li Ermazy and Li Darniu, who were still playing on the street, became excited when they saw the donkey cart. There was not much entertainment at that time, and all the work at home and in the fields was done by women. They just had to come out and play and chat every day. But it was also very boring to stay at home all day, so the two of them loved to play in the street. Any movement in the village could be seen by them. Lee Donahue came forward and said, "My dear, what are you doing in the village?" The driver stopped the car when he saw someone talking to him. "Send some food." "Send food? Our village's harvest is pretty good this year. Who is buying food on a large scale?" Lee Donahue asked. The driver thought for a moment and said, "It seems his name is Lin Xiaofan, and he bought 6 stone of high-quality grain. Our grain shop has a rule that if you buy more than 5 stone of high-quality grain, we will help transport it for free." "What? You bought 6 stone of high-quality grain?" Lee Xiaofan was shocked. "You know, I was just saying that I would take him to find cheap food." Who knew that this kid actually bought 6 stone of high-quality food at once? It turned out that he was not reluctant to buy, but bought too much and couldn't take it back. As for Lee Donahue next to him, he was completely stunned. As far as he knew, Lin Xiaofan only had 7 taels of silver. 6 stone of high-quality grain, wouldn't that be close to 4 taels of silver? Adding the cloth he brought home today, he probably didn't have much money left. How would he pay back the 8 taels of silver? He couldn't be sold, could he? With his physique and that shabby house, it wouldn't be worth much even if he sold it. From this point of view, wouldn't his 4 taels of silver be wasted? Thinking of this, Lee Donahue suddenly became anxious. How can this kid be such a spendthrift? If he continues like this, how can he pay me back? No, I'm going to ask him for the money right now. As he said that, Lee Donahue was about to go to Lin Xiaofan's house. "Brother Donahue, calm down. You won't get any money even if you go to his house now. After all, he hasn't broken the bet yet." Lee Xiaofan hurriedly grabbed Lee Donahue. Lee Donahue thought about it and felt that it was useless for him to go, but if he didn't go, he couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. "My 4 taels of silver are gone just like that. What kind of thing is this?" Having said that, Lee Donahue was so angry that he went straight home without even taking a recliner. "By the way, who is this Lin Xiaofan?" The driver looked at Lee Xiaofan, who was still there, and asked a question. "He has no parents, and he has no food to eat. If you go and see him, you will know. Walking along the entrance of the village, the poorest house is his." Lee Xiaofan replied, and suddenly felt that it was meaningless and he might as well go home and hug his wife. Thinking that Lin Xiaofan ate better than him, he felt a little unbalanced. When the driver pulled the grain past, he could smell the tempting aroma of meat. He sniffed hard. At this time, Lin Xiaofan had also finished his meal. Several young women carried the food into their home, which was already full of things. Suddenly seeing so much food, the women were not very happy, but more worried. But they didn't say anything. The food had been bought, and their husbands meant well. If it really didn't work out, they could go out and find some work to do. Their husbands are so good to them, they cannot let them down. Watching his wife busying around, Lin Xiaofan picked up a small stool and sat in the yard. He looked up at the sky. The sun was about to set, but there were no clouds in the sky, so it should be very bright at night. In ancient times, there were no lights and wine, and no environmental pollution, so the moon and stars were particularly bright, enough to illuminate the night road. If it is a cloudy day, you can't see your hand in front of you. The sun hasn't set yet, and I don't know what happened to his lime. Lin Xiaofan felt that it was not a big problem. He had studied it when he was in school and later watched videos. However, he still felt unsure unless he saw the finished product. He had just brought his wife home, and according to the rules of this country, he was still safe within half a year. But it was not absolute. When the war was tense, the higher-ups would send people to their village to recruit soldiers, and then every household would either provide men or money. He didn't know when the war would start, but he had to make money before that. Otherwise, life and death would be at the mercy of fate. With his weak body, he would probably be cannon fodder. If he wants to save his life, he has to earn enough money first. He doesn't want to die before he can enjoy himself for a few days in ancient times. Thinking of this, Lin Xiaofan went to the backyard and took a look at the earthen kiln in his home. Yesterday, we were in a hurry to build the earth kiln because we were pressed for time. So it was a little small, but it was enough for the experiment. After we mastered the temperature and time, it would not be too late to build a bigger earth kiln. The most important thing in burning lime is to control the temperature. If the temperature is too low, the lime will have a bad color and lack adhesion, and the price will be greatly reduced. If the temperature is too high, it will shrink too much, look bad, and not be worth the effort. Another thing is that he doesn't have any coal on hand, so it will take a long time to reach the appropriate temperature, which will greatly increase the time cost of the experiment. Husband, what are you doing? His train of thought was interrupted, and Lin Xiaofan looked up to see that Liu Shisha and others had appeared behind him at some point. It was getting dark, but Lin Xiaofan still ran out. They were worried, so they all followed him. Seeing that everyone was so concerned about him, Lin Xiaofan felt warm in his heart and responded with a smile. I calculated that the time is almost up, so I'm going to start the kill. Leave this matter to us, husband, you just rest nearby. Liu Yangyang said as she was about to help Lin Xiaofan open the kill. No, this is my first time burning it, I'll just turn it on myself. Lin Xiaofan held Liu Yangyang. He was quite looking forward to opening the kill for the first time. Seeing that Lin Xiaofan was so excited, the girls didn't say anything more. As long as their husbands were happy, that was enough. Everyone looked at the earthen kill with expectation. Although their husbands said that it could be burned, they were still unsure. They estimated that the possibility of burning out lime was not high. But if it was burned out, they would not have to live a hard life in the future. Speaking of which, can a broken earth kill really produce lime? Chapter 23. Xiaofan, are you dreaming? Li Xiaoqian tried hard to restrain herself from saying anything more, but seeing that the girls all had a mysterious trust in Lin Xiaofan, she really couldn't help it. In her previous life, she had seen scenes of kilns being opened on TV. The kilns were at least the size of a house. What can Lin Xiaofan burn in his earthen kiln which doesn't even have a toilet? Li Xiaoqian, shut up. Li Xiaoran quickly glared at her and tried to stop her. She had said before that she would no longer care about Li Xiaoqian, but ever since her mother died of illness, the two of them had been dependent on each other. How could she really ignore her? Seeing that Lin Xiaofan didn't say much, she breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that I have to take good care of my sister in the future, otherwise something bad will happen sooner or later. Lin Xiaofan walked to the earthen kiln to check. The firewood in the kiln had long been burned out. As it was a little dark at night, all that could be seen inside was pitch black. Seeing that Lin Xiaofan remained silent, everyone also stepped forward to check. It was pitch black inside, without even the shadow of lime. This must be a failure, right? Although the women were somewhat disappointed, this was also within their expectations. After all, their husbands had grown up in the village and probably had never seen a limestone mine, so it was normal for them to make a mistake. To put it another way, even if you recognize it correctly, it won't be burnt out in 1 or 2 times. Husband, it's okay. It's normal to fail in burning lime for the first time. Yeah, you haven't had anyone teach you before, so it's okay if you fail. We can just try a few more times. Yes, we have plenty of strength. If it doesn't work once, we can burn it twice. Sooner or later, we will be able to burn out the lime. Husband, you have done very well. Several people spoke up to comfort them. After all, their husbands were doing this for their own good. He just wanted them to live a good life. It would be bad if their enthusiasm was dampened by this. What? Did I hear you right? Lin Xiaofan, are you burning lime? A harsh, sarcastic voice was heard, and Li Daniu and Li Ermezi walked over. The two of them were also taking a night walk, and from a distance they saw a lot of people gathered in the backyard of Lin Xiaofan's house, so they came over to take a look. As a result, from the conversation between several people, I learned that Lin Xiaofan wanted to make lime. Moreover, it seemed that he failed. Li Daniu had been frustrated by Lin Xiaofan several times, so he wanted to ridicule Lin Xiaofan when he had such a good opportunity. Li Ermezi was also a man who wanted to watch the fun, so he would definitely come and make do with this kind of thing. Xiaofan, I'm telling you, don't you know how much you have in your stomach? Not everyone can make lime. If you have the time, you should plant more. Your brain is more suitable for this. Li Daniu spoke earnestly and looked like Lin Xiaofan's elder. Besides, we can't touch limestone mines. The government officials know best where the mines are. Do you have limestone? As he spoke, he looked at the grey stones not far away and laughed. Lin Xiaofan, you don't think this is limestone, do you? Oh my, this is so funny. Limestone is not a grey stone. You dug this out of the mountain and want to burn it? Are you crazy because of poverty? When the women heard what was said about their husbands, they immediately became angry. What does my husband want have to do with you? Besides, who said my husband can't make lime? Liu Yangyang had a bad temper to begin with, and she became even more furious when she heard Li Daniu mocking her husband. Har har har, you don't really think your husband can make lime, do you? You are such a fool. Little girl, making lime is not something you can just do by picking up a few stones from the mountains. Besides, your husband is a sickly man who has been lying in bed since he was a child, and you still want to make lime. Li Daniu became even more excited when he saw someone dare to refute him. Anyway, it was impossible for Lin Xiaofan to be made into lime, so he could ridicule him without restraint. Why are you guys carrying stones home all day long? I thought you were going to build a house, but it turns out you were going to make lime. You guys don't even know this common sense. No wonder you chose a barren hillside. It really makes me laugh. If your husband can make lime, I'll take my head off and let you kick it like a ball. You. Liu Yangyang and others were immediately annoyed, but they didn't know how to refute for a while. After all, their husbands did not make lime. The village was exceptionally quiet at night, but there was quite a lot of noise here, and the nearby neighbors also heard the noise and came out. Quite a few people had gathered by then. After understanding the whole story, they all started discussing it and felt that Lin Xiaofan was being a little too fanciful. Lin Xiaofan wants to make lime. Is he crazy about money? How can such delicate work be done without the craftsmanship passed down from our ancestors? I wonder why his daughters-in-law are carrying stones all day long. This lime can't be made from ordinary stones. I don't know what he was thinking. What else can I think? He has been sick in bed since he was a child. It's normal for him not to know this common sense. Seeing Lin Xiaofan being pointed out by everyone, Li Ermarz's face also showed a bit of sarcasm, but he still taught in the tone of an elder. Xiaofan, if you are really short of money, I can introduce you to a few jobs. Although it is a bit tiring, it is still no problem to earn enough money for your own meals. We should not touch this kind of high-tech work. Lin Xiaofan, however, acted as if he did not hear the voices of the crowd and started searching in the earth and kill. After a while, his eyes lit up, and when he stretched out his hand again, a white stone appeared in his hand. In an instant, Li Daniu's laughter stopped abruptly, and the surrounding discussions also disappeared at this moment. What is this? Li Ermazi asked in shock. He hurried forward, snatched the stone from Lin Xiaofan's hand, his eyes widened. Although he had never seen how others burned lime, but in the past, when people in the village built houses, families with better financial conditions would buy some quicklime, and the stone would look like this. But, didn't Lin Xiaofan fail? Wasn't it produced? This thing is definitely not. It just looks a bit like lime. Lime. Lin Xiaofan had an indifferent expression, as if he was just saying that the night was very beautiful tonight. To be precise, this should be quicklime. Hiss, as soon as these words came out, everyone took a breath. Is this really lime? Did this guy really succeed? Just using these gray, broken stones. Impossible, absolutely impossible. This kid is a sickly person. He never leaves the house and has no experience at all. He may not even have seen a lime kiln, so how could he make lime? This is just a stone that looks like lime. It must be an ordinary stone. Li Daniu was also confused and quickly denied it. Lime not only requires limestone ore as raw material, but also requires good control of the temperature and rich experience to burn it. How could Lin Xiaofan make it? Chapter 24. Bet again. Yes, this should be a whiter stone. Li Ermazi also couldn't believe that Lin Xiaofan could burn lime. But at this moment, the village head who had heard the news came out from the crowd, carefully examined the stone for a while, and even touched it with his hand, his whole body trembling with excitement. This is lime. When I was young, I went to town to help a wealthy family build a house, and they used this. I looked at it carefully at the time, and it looked exactly like this. There's no way I could have mistaken it. As soon as the village chief said this, the crowd exploded. How is this possible? Lin Xiaofan actually created lime. Could it be that he has a method for making lime? That shouldn't be the case. I heard that lime is difficult to make. That's right. I heard that the method of making lime is passed down from ancestors and is never passed on to outsiders. How could he, who has no parents and has never left the village since childhood, make lime? Whether it was a guess or he really had the ability, he did make it anyway. Since he was able to make it, it means there really is a stone mine on the hillside he chose. Lin Xiaofan has really found a treasure. That's not right. Isn't there no grass growing on that piece of land? Is there really lime in it? Hey, didn't you see his wives digging over there these past few days? I never thought that this dusty stone could be used to make lime. It is said that the price of limestone is almost the same as that of high-quality grain. If all the stones in the mountain were mined, how much money would it cost? It seems that Lin Xiaofan will become rich in the future. Damn it, why can't I have such good luck? Anyway, try to curry favor with Lin Xiaofan as soon as possible. Maybe you can get some benefits in the future. Xiaofan, I have a daughter at home. She is only 16 this year and is more capable than a man. Would you like to consider it? Li Daniu was so shocked that he couldn't recover for a long time. He still didn't believe that Lin Xiaofan could make lime. Hearing that the villagers and neighbors began to fawn on him, he suddenly became anxious. Why did everyone fawn on this poor country bumpkin? Moreover, he had paid for taels of silver to let Lin Xiaofan choose that hillside land. He had wanted to cheat him, but he got lucky and got a great bargain. No, we can't let him live so comfortably. Har har, it's just a blind cat catching a dead mouse, and he just happened to produce a small piece. Think about it, this earthen kiln is so big, it can produce dozens of kilograms at a time. Why did he only take out such a small piece? Lin Xiaofan, don't you think so? A slightly sarcastic voice was heard, and everyone looked over and saw that it was Li Daniu with an unwilling look on his face. Everyone didn't really recognize Lin Xiaofan's ability, but after hearing what Li Daniu said, they all chose to believe Li Daniu's judgment. So, everyone's eyes were focused on Lin Xiaofan, waiting for his reply. Lin Xiaofan looked at Li Daniu, who was making trouble, and his eyes gradually became cold. If he wants to make a lot of money in the future, he will have to hire a lot of people, and the people from the same village who live closest to him are the best candidates. If the villagers actively curry favor with him, and he gives them a job, everyone will be grateful to him. But if he takes the initiative to recruit people, it will be like he is asking others to do things for him, and the effect will be far different. Li Daniu's interruption made the originally simple task a little more difficult. What if there is more than just this small piece? Lin Xiaofan said in a cold tone, I remember someone just said that if I can make lime, he will take off his head and let me kick it like a ball. Li Daniu was stunned for a moment, then thought about it carefully and realized that he had indeed said it. At that time, he only wanted to avenge the slap he received this afternoon, so he spoke harshly. But who could have thought that Lin Xiaofan, a country bumpkin, could really be so cunning? But it didn't matter, as long as he pretended that he hadn't said it, he could get away with it. After all, Lin Xiaofan had no evidence. Even if he had, he couldn't really kill him. He has lived for several decades longer, but when it comes to being a rogue, Lin Xiaofan is still far inferior to him. Yes, I think I heard it. I heard that, too. It seems that Li Daniu said that. But before he could open his mouth, the neighbors, who were eager to watch the fun, all started to make a fuss. After hearing this, Li Daniu's face turned pale and he cursed his neighbors' ancestors for 18 generations in his heart. But after the neighbors' coaxing, this method of playing rogue would definitely not work. If he forced himself to do so, he would lose face. They were all from the same village, and they would meet each other every day. He didn't want to walk with his head down for the next 6 months. Har har, making a small piece by guessing, can that be considered as making it? After thinking for a while, Li Daniu finally came up with a solution. Lin Xiaofan only made one piece, and as long as he held on to this point, he might still be able to get away with it. In this way, you can save some face for yourself. What if there is still lime in my kiln? Lin Xiaofan folded his hands over his chest and looked at Li Daniu with a teasing look in his eyes. Want to save face? If you want to save face, then you can save a lot of trouble. I would have to put on a show to trick you, but if you want to save face, then there is no need to do that. How about this? We are all neighbors from the same village, and I am not asking you to take off your head. Let's bet 2 taels of silver on whether I can still find lime from the earthen kiln. How about that? After hearing this, Li Daniu's eyes became uncertain. Lin Xiaofan is so confident, maybe there really is lime in it. Under normal circumstances, he would definitely not gamble. After all, the risk is too great. But now there are so many people watching him in the village. If he just leaves, he will be inferior to others in the village in the future. This boy might just be pretending. It was so dark, he definitely didn't know if there was anything. Besides, how could lime be refined so easily? This guy must be bluffing me. Unfortunately, he is still a little immature. Just at this moment, the villagers started to make a fuss again. Take a gamble. Bet him. Lee Darniu, hurry up and bet, don't be a coward. For farmers like them, their daily life consists of working, eating, and sleeping, with no entertainment options. Now that we finally have a big show to watch, we certainly can't let it die halfway. Whatever, let's take a gamble. Maybe we can earn 2 taels of silver. Lee Darniu gritted his teeth and said, let's bet, who's afraid of you? Seeing that Lee Darniu agreed, Lin Xiaofan smiled and said, since you choose to save face, the money will be mine. To make lime, one must first consider the temperature and second the smelting time. Since one piece can be smelted out, it means the temperature and time are almost the same, so there is definitely more than one piece of lime in it. The most important thing is that Lin Xiaofan actually found a few stones just now, which should also be lime. But he just didn't have time to take them out. Husband, I'll look for it again. Liu Yangyang volunteered. Okay, be careful and don't get burned. Get all the lime out of there so that some people won't find all kinds of excuses. Seeing Liu Yangyang was so enthusiastic, Lin Xiaofan agreed. It didn't matter who went. Besides, if there was too much lime, he might not be able to move it in one trip. Lin Xiaofan, don't be too proud. It's still unclear who will win or lose. Chapter 25 Want to dominate. Seeing that Lin Xiaofan's words were referring to him, Li Darniu immediately refuted, but there was not much confidence in his tone. He looked at Lin Xiaofan's eyes, trying to find a little panic in them to find comfort. It's a pity that there was only confidence in Lin Xiaofan's eyes. Liu Yangyang did not keep everyone waiting for long. After a while, she came out covered in dust and dirt, with 7 or 8 pieces of lime in her arms. Husband, this is all. Liu Yangyang put the lime down and wiped the sweat off her face with her sleeve. The earthen kiln had just finished burning the lime, and the temperature was much higher than outside. Lin Xiaofan felt a little distressed when he saw this. The alternating temperature was very harmful to the body. It would be troublesome if he caught a cold. He should find outsiders to do this kind of hard work in the future. His own people only needed to master the core technology. Wife, you've worked so hard. Lin Xiaofan immediately stepped forward, raised his sleeves and carefully wiped the dust off Liu Yanyan's face. It would have been fine if she hadn't wiped it. After wiping it, Liu Yanyan's originally grey face became even darker and greyer, like a little cat. Liu Shisha and the others couldn't help but burst out laughing. The villagers watching couldn't help but laugh when they saw this. And those women who came over to watch looked at Lin Xiaofan with envy, then at the dusty Liu Yangyang, and they could hardly hide the envy in their eyes. Lin Xiaofan can make more than one piece of lime, so his life will definitely get better and better in the future. His wives were as skinny as monkeys, and they looked like unsellable goods that couldn't bear children. How could such unwanted women live better than himself? Not only will life be better in the future, there will be money, and even the man will know how to care for you. They also worked hard at home, but even if they were exhausted, their men never said a good word to them, and sometimes even beat them up. Seeing that there was still lime coming out, Liu Shisha and others also showed some excitement on their faces. First, my husband earned another 2 taels of silver. You know, 2 taels of silver can buy more than 3 share of high-quality grain. Second, the lime was refined surprisingly well. Since it was the first time, they did not put in much limestone ore. Now it seems that at least 1/3 of the ore has been refined into lime. You know, this is only the first time. As the technology continues to improve, the success rate will get higher and higher. By then, will we still worry about not having enough food? So much. It doesn't look like he is guessing. Maybe Lin Xiaofan really knows some refining methods. Is lime worth the money? Let's put it this way. 1 pound of lime can be exchanged for 1.5 pounds of coarse grains. Do you think it's worth it? Won't Lin Xiaofan be very successful in the future? Xiaofan, my granddaughter is 17 years old this year. She is as pretty as your Liu Shisha, and she is also very hardworking. Would you like to consider it? When Lin Xiaofan heard the last sentence, his eyes suddenly lit up. Just as he was about to discuss further, he found that Li Daniu was tiptoeing out of the crowd. The neighbors were chatting animatedly and no one noticed him. Uncle Daniu, don't be in such a hurry to leave. I wonder when you will deliver the 2 taels of silver. Li Daniu was already feeling guilty, and when he was suddenly called by his name, he jumped in fright. This funny look immediately caused a burst of laughter. Li Daniu wiped the cold sweat from his face and snorted coldly, HMPH, don't worry, I will definitely give you the money. Then, an idea suddenly occurred to him. This piece of land belongs to Lin Xiaofan, so he definitely can't get it back, but he can find a way to get Lin Xiaofan to return the land to the village. What he couldn't get, he couldn't let Lin Xiaofan get either. Xiaofan, you also know that there have been wars and heavy taxes in recent years. If there is a little disaster, many people in the village will die. This mine originally belongs to the village. Why don't you return it to the village? When the villagers heard this, their eyes suddenly lit up. If the mine became the village's property, everyone would be able to make a lot of money from it. For a moment, everyone's eyes turned to Lin Xiaofan. The mine belongs to Lin Xiaofan, this is written in black and white. If he doesn't agree, no one can help him. The village head was also somewhat moved, and after thinking for a moment he spoke. Xiaofan, the mine is so big that you can't mine it all by yourself. How about this, you return the mine to the village, and we can gather 30 taels of silver in exchange. The head of the village stroked his beard and looked up. He felt that his conditions were tempting enough. After all, Lin Xiaofan grew up in a poor family and may have never seen so much money. This money was enough for him to move to a bigger yard and buy some new clothes, and the rest would be enough to last him through a year of famine. However, what he didn't expect was that Lin Xiaofan refused without even thinking about it. No, I don't plan to sell the mine for the time being. This mine is in his hands and will be turned into tens of thousands of taels of silver sooner or later. How could he let the villagers exchange it for 30 taels of silver? The village head frowned after hearing this, thinking that he had given too little, so he gritted his teeth and said, well, our village will raise 40 taels of silver for you. In addition, you will also have a share of the profits generated by the mine. Xiaofan, our villagers are not easy, and we really can't raise more. Forget it, Uncle Li. I still have a use for the mine. Lin Xiaofan kept smiling and politely rejected the headman's request. The head of the village has always treated him well and is now discussing things with him in a friendly tone. It is impossible for him to choose to ignore him or directly retort as he did to Li Daniu. However, Li Daniu's tactic of killing someone with a borrowed knife was indeed cruel. Xiaofan, why don't you return the mine to the village? Your family can't afford such a big mine. Yes, we have to farm regularly, so we don't have time to mine. Let the village handle it, it will be good for all of us. Don't worry, Xiaofan, we will sell everything we have and raise 40 taels of silver for you. The neighbors nearby also wanted to get a piece of the pie and urged Lin Xiaofan to hand over the mine. Seeing this, Lin Xiaofan frowned and responded. Gentlemen, I will never hand over the mine to you. And even if I hand it over to you, can you make lime? After hearing this, the neighbors were silent. Making lime? Are you kidding? Many of them had never touched a clay kiln in their lives, let alone making lime. You know, lime making is a technical job. If you have this skill, you can find a job in the city and never worry about food and drink for the rest of your life, or even for your entire family. If it is really that easy to learn, who would still farm here? Seeing that no one responded, Lin Xiaofan continued. Since you don't know how to make lime, what's the point of you taking the mine? You can only sell the ore. But the price of the ore is less than 1/3 of the lime. And you have to mine it and send it to the town. How much money will you get after a trip? Chapter 26. I'm going to be busy tonight. It's a 10-kilometer journey from here to the town, and you have to climb over several hills. It's a good thing for an ordinary person to carry 20 to 30 kilograms of stuff back and forth. If you use a bullock cart to transport it, you may not reach the city before dark. The quarry is not expensive, and it's better to go out and work to earn more money. After saying that, everyone fell into deep thought. What Lin Xiaofan said was indeed reasonable. Even if the stone mine was given to them, they would not make any money. Seeing that his speech had an effect, Lin Xiaofan continued. But don't worry, folks. I will definitely help you make money together in the future. Seeing that most of the neighbors had been convinced, Li Daniu was immediately unhappy. If Lin Xiaofan really became rich, wouldn't he take revenge on him? Would he still be able to survive in the future? Fellow villagers, don't be fooled by Lin Xiaofan. Think about it, this year is a good year for the weather, but if a famine comes and the crops don't grow, won't we still have to rely on selling quarries to make a living? In a panic, Li Darniu found a reason and tried to convince his fellow villagers. How ridiculous! If a famine strikes, can you buy food even if you have money? Lin Xiaofan directly responded to Li Darniu's illogical words. During the famine years, food was in short supply and the price would definitely rise sharply. By then, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to buy much even if you had money. Li Darniu wanted to find another excuse, but the village head raised his hand to stop him. Darniu, that's enough. This quarry originally belonged to Lin Xiaofan. Giving it to us is a favor, not giving it to us is a duty. Besides, even if he gave it to us, we wouldn't make any money. When everyone heard the village chief speak, they sighed and prepared to go home and sleep. Their sigh was not because Lin Xiaofan didn't give him the stone mine, but because he missed an opportunity to make money. After everyone had dispersed, Liu Cixi ran over directly. My husband, you are so amazing. You have really turned into lime. Accompanied by a fresh fragrance, the beauty came into his arms, and Lin Xiaofan hugged her subconsciously. Liu Cixi's body is so soft, as if she has no bones, and it is extremely comfortable to hug her. That's right, don't you see who I am, your husband? Lin Xiaofan raised his head proudly, then lowered his head to sniff her hair. It smelled so good. Husband, just because we make lime doesn't mean we can have enough food every day. Liu Cixi blinked her big eyes, clasped her hands tightly, and looked at Lin Xiaofan with anticipation. Happiness came so suddenly that she couldn't imagine it. After all, 2 days ago, she was still living a hungry life. Lin Xiaofan was amused by Liu Cixi's appearance. He rubbed her head with his hand and said with a smile. Of course, I promise you that from now on, not only will you be full every meal, but you will also have meat every meal until you get tired of it. After receiving a positive answer, Liu Cixi jumped up happily. Really? That's great, we can have meat for every meal from now on. Everyone was amused by Liu Cixi's appearance. At the same time, they were also happy from the bottom of their hearts. In the future, as long as they worked hard, they would be able to have enough food every day. This was something they had never dared to think about before. But then again, we still have a very important mission to do tonight. Feeling happy, Lin Xiaofan began to preach. What mission? Li Xiaoran asked with some confusion. It was so late tonight, she couldn't possibly continue making lime. As for their house, it was almost cleaned up, and she couldn't think of any other tasks to do. Seeing that everyone's curiosity was piqued, Lin Xiaofan immediately spoke. Catch the thief. Catch the thief. Where did the thief come from? Stealing is a very bad behavior, so there is a rule passed down from ancestors in the village. If someone is caught stealing, they will be driven out at the least, or beaten to death on the spot. Therefore, unless there is a famine that can kill people, no one in the village will steal. As for people outside the village, it was even more impossible. Their house was so shabby that a normal thief would not even look at it. Moreover, the food was all stored in the house. Even if he looked, he would only see a pile of stones and firewood. Husband, where did the thief come from? Everyone thought for a long time but couldn't figure out where the thief would come from to steal their things. Li Darniu will certainly be jealous when he sees that I can make lime and will have a good life in the future. He will also think that if I can make lime, then he can too. Once he makes lime, he will have a reason to ask the village to take back my land. So I predict that he will go to their mine tonight to steal some stones and go back to study them himself. Lin Xiaofan slowly expressed his speculation. After hearing this, everyone suddenly understood. Given Li Darniu's personality, there is a high possibility that he will steal something tonight. Husband, you are so smart. Liu Cixi praised from the bottom of her heart. Okay, then we will catch him tonight and send him to the head of the village. Then he will be driven out of the village according to the rules. With his lazy nature, he will die if he goes out. Liu Yangyang said excitedly. She had long disliked Li Darniu because he was ugly and had a bad mouth. Yes, let's drive him out of the village together. Liu Cixi also echoed excitedly, picked up a wooden stick and swung it vigorously, as if she had thought of the scene of Li Darniu starving to death in a foreign land. No, we can't drive him out of the village tonight. He's going to their mines to steal rocks, and even if we catch him in the act, we won't have any evidence. Lin Xiaofan thought about it and spoke. This is not modern times, there are no cameras or anything like that to record the incident. Even if Liu Daniu is caught, as long as he refuses to admit it, there is nothing anyone can do to him. After hearing this, Liu Yangyang and Liu Sisi felt as if someone had poured a bucket of water over their heads, and they felt much more listless. Li Xiaoran thought about it for a while, and suddenly his eyes lit up and he thought of a solution. Then let's call the village head. If he is the village head, he can prove it. No, even if we and the head of the village saw it together, it would be difficult to prove that he stole something. Liu Shisha shook her head slightly. If any household and the head of the village could testify together to prove that a person stole something, then the cost of wrongly accusing someone would be too low. But it doesn't matter. When the time comes, we will catch him and beat him up to make him hand over the silver. He won't be able to do anything about it since he was the one who stole the things first. Lin Xiaofan thought about it for a while and finally came up with a solution. Although it couldn't completely eliminate the trouble, it could at least help him vent his anger. Good idea. Let's do it. Liu Yangyang is ready to take action. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of smashing things continued to come from Li Daniu's house. I'm so angry, I'm so angry. Lin Xiaofan, that little bastard, cheated me out of 6 taels of silver in just 2 days. Chapter 27 Catch the Thief. Li Daniu raised his leg and kicked over a table. At this time, his home had been completely destroyed by him. He smashed everything that could be smashed, and the tables and chairs were all on the ground. He couldn't understand why Lin Xiaofan, a country bumpkin, could have such luck. He was provoked into choosing a piece of barren land, but it turned out that there was a stone mine on that land. He just stuffed some stone mines into the earthen kiln and finally produced lime. He chose the land with the mine under my guidance. Not only does he not know how to be grateful, he also irritates me everywhere. This country bumpkin really makes me so angry. As he said that, Li Daniu slammed his fist on the fallen table. Crack. R. The sound of the table legs breaking and Li Daniu's screams were heard at the same time. Li Daniu squatted on the ground, groaning, holding his hands. He was so angry that he used too much force. In addition, he was already a little weak, and now he felt like his bones were broken. The pain was so excruciating that he broke into a cold sweat. Come out and give me a rub. Li Daniu yelled at his wives. Li Daniu had a bad temper to begin with, and he would beat or scold his wife for no reason. Now that he was so angry, the women were trembling with fear, and none of them dared to come forward. Seeing that his face was distorted with anger, the women were trembling with fear. Are you all dead? Can't you see I'm almost dying of pain? Come here. Li Daniu had a ferocious look on his face, and the women were even more frightened. They didn't know who pushed hard, and a young woman staggered and took a step forward. Li Daniu stared at her intently. The woman was afraid, but she had no choice but to move forward. She came over tremblingly and squatted down to blow Li Daniu. As a result, she was too nervous and accidentally touched Li Daniu's injured part. Bang! A slap sounded, and the woman fell to the ground, lying on the ground in a mess. Get out of the way, trash! Li Daniu roared. The young woman hurriedly got up from the ground, ran back to the inner room crying, tears streaming down her face, but she didn't dare cry out loud. Since coming to this family, she has worked day and night, but in the end she doesn't even have the right to have a full meal, even though there is plenty of surplus food at home. Not only that, he also had to endure unwarranted beatings and scolding from Li Daniu. Thinking of the scene where Lin Xiaofan wiped the dust off his wife tonight, she felt more and more uncomfortable. Why are other people's husbands so young, handsome and caring, while my husband only knows how to be lazy and beat and scold people every day? But she could only swallow all this. Li Daniu sat on the ground in the outer hall, unable to calm down for a long time. After an unknown amount of time, a mouse heard no movement in the outer hall and suddenly jumped out of the house and ran outside. Damn it, they come to steal food again. Li Daniu's emotions exploded again, and he was shaking with anger. He felt around for tools but couldn't find one, so he quickly took off his shoes and threw them out with all his strength. But the little mouse dodged it with a small move. Before leaving, it turned back and called Li Daniu twice, as if to laugh at his incompetence. You fucking. Li Daniu was about to chase after him, but when he stood up he ran out of breath and nearly fainted. Things have been going wrong lately, his emotions have been so up and down that he feels like he's almost collapsing. Seeing this, the mouse still did not leave, but wagged its tail at Lee Darniu again. Stealing food all day long, stealing. Lee Darniu suddenly thought of something and slapped his forehead. Yes, I can go steal some ore. The reason why Lin Xiaofan was able to convince his neighbors was because none of them knew how to make lime, so it was useless for them to go to the mine. But if he could find a way to refine lime, wouldn't that give the village a reason to own the mine? Even a country bumpkin like Lin Xiaofan can make it, so with my intelligence and talent, refining lime should not be difficult as long as I have the raw materials. As long as you steal some ore and experiment, you will be able to refine it. At that time, Lin Xiaofan would have to hand over his mine, and not only would he be able to gain a good reputation in the village, but he would also be able to make a fortune by refining lime. It was truly a best of both worlds plan. The plan became more and more perfect in Lee Darniu's mind. He immediately decided to steal some ore tonight. In a corner of the mine, 6 figures were lying on the ground. Looking closely, they were Lin Xiaofan's family. At this time, Liu Yangyang took a cloth bag and half put it on her head. She looked listlessly at the moon in the sky, which was already very high. A breeze blew by, and she couldn't help yawning. Husband, will Lee Darniu really come tonight? Lin Xiaofan looked at the empty mountain area and felt a little uncertain. Logically speaking, given Lee Darniu's personality, he would definitely come tonight. Could it be that I overestimated him and he hasn't thought of stealing the ore yet? Wait a little longer, maybe this guy will come to his senses. Lin Xiaofan said, we have waited for so long. If we leave now, all our efforts will be in vain. Liu Cixi, who was on guard duty, was also drowsy at this time. She propped up her head with the stick in her hand to prevent herself from falling asleep. Half an hour ago, everyone came to the hillside and crouched. She thought catching a thief would be an interesting thing, so she took the job of keeping watch with great interest. But who knew it would be so boring? No, I can't sleep. Liu Cixi shook her head, forced herself to cheer up, and looked into the distance. Just at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the distance. Liu Cixi rubbed her eyes to make sure she was not mistaken. Her eyes suddenly lit up and she whispered, someone is coming. In an instant, everyone became alert and clenched the sticks in their hands. Liu Yangyang also clenched the cloth bag in her hand. Speaking of which, Sister Yangyang, what do you mean by holding a cloth bag? Liu Cixi tried hard to hold back her laughter and asked. Liu Yangyang, holding a cloth bag and looking serious, has a unique sense of humor. What do you know, little kid? Liu Yangyang rolled her eyes at Liu Cixi and said, this is how it feels like a ritual. But we're not robbing. They are all pretty much the same. Sure, here it comes. The figure was getting closer and closer, and it was Lee Darniu with a wretched look on his face. Lee Darniu, holding a hoe, walked around stealthily, found a place that could be mined, and started digging with the hoe. I don't know what happy things he was thinking about at this moment, but a lewd smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he was muttering to himself. The hoe is not suitable for mining, and the stone ore is relatively hard. After digging for a long time, he finally dug out a small piece. It's really hard. Lee Darniu wiped the sweat off his face and looked up at the hoe. There was already a gap on it. If he dug a few more pieces, it might be unusable in the future. Damn it, you've ruined my hoe again. Damn Lin Xiaofan, I will tear you into pieces. Woo woo. Lee Darniu was cursing halfway when he suddenly felt something covering his head, and then everything in front of him went black.